the studios, powering possibilities. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com. Now, Andrew Salchunas, 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Good Thursday morning to everybody out there. I'm Connor Thomas filling in for Andrew Salchunas here on 97.5 Middays, and we have maybe more Eagles drama to get into. We've got a very weird situation going on in Philadelphia Eagles Twitter world right now, and I don't totally know what to make of part of it. So if you're not caught up on what's going on with the Eagles circus that got going partway through this past season, carried them through the collapse, and has been ongoing this offseason, there have been some very interesting things said and tweeted about the Eagles and the locker room and the head coach and where this team is right now. So there was a statement made that a high-profile player may not be back and that there are major issues in the locker room and that the coach wasn't doing things the right way. And that individual who made those statements was very vague, and I think purposefully very vague, because I don't know that there's actually a story there. I think that is just trying to stir up some type of drama when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles. Everyone now is out for clicks or listens, and sometimes that leads to people making things up or extending the truth to try and stir the pot. That's just the nature of the world we live in today with the way that social media affects professional sports. And one guy that I know is 100% credible on things of NFL nature is Adam Schefter. So if you heard the comments made about a high-profile player for the Eagles potentially not being back and there are major issues in that locker room and they're all jumbled up and no one's trusting anybody, I want you to take a listen because Adam Schefter joined the John Kincaid Show yesterday. And he talked about the statements made about the Eagles and whether or not they are based in fact at all. So before we get any further into this conversation, I want you to hear what the ESPN head NFL reporter had to say about those comments on the Eagles.
By the way, I don't even know if the National Enquirer would write something like that. And by the way, I texted somebody in the organization yesterday. I'm like, what is this? And the text back, the quote was, none of that S word happened. None of that S happened. That's what qualifies, as a report. You can just go say whatever you want, and it gets clicks, and people hear about it. Was somebody with another player's woman, or who knows? I'm just telling you, somebody in the organization, was pretty adamant yesterday. None of that happened.
So that basically debunks the whole, there's crazy stuff going on we don't even know about. A high-profile player's leaving. There's more drama than you think, all of this stuff. Adam Schefter basically said that's BS. So we can leave that part of it to the side. But it started a very interesting conversation via Twitter. So yesterday, Derek Gunn, who is connected to the team, he's been around the team forever. He knows the guys in the locker room. He has a relationship with the players, tweeted this. According to sources, Jalen's big contract pulled in numerous directions on and off the field, put him under a lot of pressure he didn't handle well. Big Dom suspended, controls Sirianni emotions on sideline in his absence. Nick gets in numerous arguments with players, coaches during the game. That was the tweet from Derek Gunn. And again, he said, according to sources. So I'm going to take that at his word because Derek Gunn's track record with the team is that he knows people in that locker room. So now we have an extending of it, and I believe that is based in some fact. Now, how much, we may never know, but I'm going to trust at least partially that that's the case. And we know that there were issues with the Philadelphia Eagles last year as far as the locker room is concerned, right? We know there was some finger pointing. We know that A.J. Brown called for a team meeting and said we have to trust in the coaches. And when you call for that, that normally means that there is a lack of trust in the coaching staff. You don't call for more faith in coaches if you have full faith in coaches, right? It would stand to reason. So I understand that there might be something going on with the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to get into the Nick Sirianni part of that with the Big Dom controls him on the sidelines. And if Big Dom happens to not be in a game or at a game, Nick Sirianni just goes nuts and starts yelling at players. That's a conversation in and of itself. There are layers to this. The Eagles offseason is turning into, or I guess the Eagles end of this past season is like an onion. And not just because it has a lot of layers, but because it stinks. And then on top of that, this is where it gets really like, I feel like I'm explaining the plot of Inception to you. So try and stay with me here. But we have this A.J. Brown tweet that may or may not be A.J. Brown. How weird can this story get? This is A.J. Brown's Twitter account. It is his account. It has like 260,000 followers. It's followed by numerous teammates of his. He has tweeted personally from his account this one before. Like, remember back when he was having his media silence? He tweeted from this same Twitter account, "I will speak tomorrow." And then he spoke the next day with media. So at some point, A.J. Brown did have control of this Twitter account. Now, Darius Slay has tweeted that this isn't A.J. anymore. Some people are saying that a fan hacked into A.J.'s account. All I know is it's the real account. There's no way of knowing who's actually tweeting from it. So you got to take everything from this with a grain of salt. This is sports in 2024. There are burners and hacked accounts, and no one knows who's actually saying what, and the water is only getting murkier by the day as social media becomes more and more prevalent as a way for athletes or other people to voice their opinions. But ultimately, what this has all led to, right, and we're going to break down the parts that affect the Eagles more as far as the on-the-field stuff as we go through the show. But this was the tweet from A.J. Brown's account. Maybe not A.J. Brown himself, but A.J. Brown's account from 10 hours ago. Philly media is so lame. It's literally something every day. Then the fans believe the BS. They really should start raising the prices of microphones and cameras because you people will say anything for views. I see why nobody likes us because we don't even like us. Hashtag reality TV. So here's what I'm going to say right off the bat. I'm not going to say with any level of confidence that that was A.J. Brown who said that. I can't because there's enough people saying that that is someone who hacked into his account or someone else is running his account right now. If that's the case, my one piece of advice would be, AJ, get your Twitter back because whoever has your account's causing a lot of problems. But I think it brings up a very interesting conversation. And I don't think A.J. Brown is the one who has to start this conversation. So even if it was not him that tweeted it, I know for a fact that there are athletes in this city that feel that the media can be overbearing and unfair at times. And the same goes for the fan base. I know there are many people in the fan base out there. This is not just the Eagles, just the city of Philadelphia in general, that feel that the media is sometimes over the top unfair in this city. And that's where it becomes an interesting conversation because it's bigger than just A.J. Brown and it's bigger than just the Eagles. So here's my question to you to start the program today. It's a philosophical one. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can chime in at 610-632-0975 to jump into the program today. But an overarching Philadelphia sports conversation and the relationship with the media. There are two sides to this, right? Either players, when they come to the city of Philadelphia, need to recognize that this is a really tough market to exist in as a professional athlete. This is a high-profile market. There are upsides to that. Players want to come play here. You're going to have a rabid fan base. Building's going to be packed every night, and people are going to live and die with the way your team plays. People love that. You want to play in front of packed stadiums. You want to play for a fan base that cares. But another part of being in a high-profile market like Philadelphia, like New York, like Boston, like these Northeast cities where we know how the fan bases act, is you're going to be placed under an unfair level of scrutiny compared to your peers. Someone who makes a mistake in Minneapolis is not going to catch as much heat as someone who makes a mistake in Philadelphia. That is just the nature of how the city and the market exists. So, should we, one, expect players to accept that and anything that the media says about them, not anything, right? There's still stuff that's unfair to criticize, but most of the criticism from the media is just part of the job of playing in Philadelphia. Or, on the other hand, do you believe that we're too tough on players in this city? Listen, I'm sitting here as part of I'm not a beat reporter or anything. I'm not in the locker rooms, but I'm sitting here as a voice of the media. And I will tell you, there are times where I feel that people in this city who sit behind a microphone, who are on camera, who report on the team and write stories, are too harsh on the teams they cover, the teams they follow, the teams they root for. That might just be a nature of the city, right? Or it could be that you as members of the fan base out there listening might say, yeah, man, the media causes problems in this city. I wish they were easier on the teams and the players. I wish they would make it easier to play in this city. I'm not telling you one or the other is right. I'm asking for your opinion on which one you think. Should players be better at dealing with the media presence that comes with playing in Philadelphia? Or should the media, in this day and age, where social media is more prevalent, everybody sees everything, the players have a right to respond and do, and it often causes more problems than it would have in the past when just a story was written in the paper? Does the media need to take a different approach on how they handle these teams? I'll be honest, and I am a little bit biased because I am a member of one of these parties. I am a member of the media. But my gut instinct is to say that part of what makes Philadelphia Philadelphia is that the media coverage is extensive and well done. I think we have a lot of great reporters and people who talk about these teams in this city. And if you want to play in Philadelphia, you're going to have to deal with the pressures and the media scrutiny that come with a bigger market. And that does extend to the fan base sometimes too, right? If you're a fan out there and you're like, the media needs to be softer on the team. Think about how you treated the Eagles down the stretch. Were you forgiving to the way they collapsed? Were you giving them compassion when you watched them fall apart at the end of the season and get smoked by the Buccaneers? Like, it's okay to be hard on your teams. We just need to get to a point where we accept that's the way we're going to be, or if we're not willing to accept that, changes need to be made. So that's the question to start. You can jump in at 610-632-0975. And again, I want to be very clear. No one can be sure whether or not that's actually A.J. Brown tweeting these things. I'm not putting this on the individual, but I think the conversation is one that is worth having based on the fact that this has been a theme in Philadelphia for years, how the media, the fan base, and the players interact. So are we too hard on the players, or do the players need to be tougher in a city like Philadelphia? Would love to hear your thoughts. I know you have some. So we'll get into that. And coming up on the other side, there's more to this, right? We're going to dive into a conversation about the Nick Sirianni part of all of this, because that exists in a tweet from Derek Gunn that I know came from a place of legitimacy. And we have to discuss what that means for the head coach in his new role, a reduced role, if he's having trouble on the sidelines interacting with other coaches and players just because the head of security is not on the sidelines. That would be another problem in and of itself. So we're going to get into that coming up. But it's a very interesting discussion, the ecosystem of media, fan base, and player in the city. And I want to know, as part of that ecosystem, the fans of these teams, where do you stand on that? We'll get into that coming up. I'm Connor Thomas. Silvana Keller on the board, filling in for Andrew Salchunas on 97.5 Middays. We're back after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Connor Thomas back live with you, filling in for Andrew Salchunas. Silvana Keller are on the board. And where we start the conversation today is a very interesting series of statements. One that says that the Eagles locker room is falling apart from someone who is not in the locker room with the team. And then Adam Schefter refuted that yesterday on the John Kincaid show. Then Derek Gunn comes out and says that Jalen Hurts' new big contract pulled him in multiple directions and could have been distracting, and that Nick Sirianni couldn't handle not having Big Dom next to him to keep his emotions in check on the sidelines. That becomes a whole thing. And then A.J. Brown's Twitter account. Whether it's A.J. Brown or not, we don't know. It is his Twitter account. Could it be someone else tweeting from it? I suppose so. It's a super weird situation where some of his teammates, including Darius Slay, are telling us that that's not A.J. Brown actually tweeting from that account, but it is his main account. Either way, comes out and says that the Philly media is lame, is causing all these problems and everything like that. So it begins a conversation that we've had in this city before, but I think evolves as the way social media affects athletes and the media in general changes. And my question to you based on that is, when you look at the way that the media and the fan base and the players interact in the city of Philadelphia, that's the big three, right? How does the fan base affect the other two parties, the media the other two, the players the other two? The fan base is going to be the fan base. I will never, ever ask you as fans to be any different here in Philadelphia. I just won't. One, I have been in this area my whole life. I know that that is like trying to change the tides. I'm not the moon. I have no effect over that. I cannot change the way that this fan base feels about their teams and players. It is an unstoppable force of nature here in Philadelphia, and I love this fan base for it. So the passion that you all have for these teams, I would never try and change. But when it comes to the media and when it comes to the players, I think there may need to be a slight shift in the way that we handle things. But we need to make it known which side we're on. Do you believe that the players in this city need to be a little bit more understanding of the scrutiny that naturally comes with being in a market like Philadelphia? Like, this is part of the job. If I showed up here and sat down in this chair and then my boss told me, okay, now you got to speak into the microphone. And I was like, what? I didn't agree to this. Like, no, that's part of the job of working in radio. Part of the job of working in Philadelphia might just be you have to deal with this media scrutiny and the scrutiny from the fan base on top of that. Or do you think that the media in Philadelphia is in a place where they sometimes overstep their bounds and can be too critical, and it makes it harder for players to exist in this sports ecosystem? And maybe the media needs to roll it back a little bit. My gut instinct, again, is that I think it's part of the job for a player in a big-time city like Philadelphia that you're going to have to deal with the media scrutiny. I think that's just part of what comes with playing in a city that has this much of a spotlight on its sports teams. That doesn't mean that the media is blameless. It means that you kind of have to accept the unfairness of it for the benefit of playing in a city with the history and the basically standard that Philadelphia has. That's where I lean, but I'm interested as to where the fan base leans. And you can jump in on this at 610-632-0975. And we are applying this to the Eagles mainly right now. I do want to make this clear again. Like, if you're calling in, you want to talk about this, you can absolutely say, hey, this Eagles player, the Eagles team in general, the way the season ended. I just want us to acknowledge that there are people saying that the A.J. Brown Twitter account is no longer under his control. So what isn't good for the situation is if we have a bunch of people saying, well, A.J. Brown's a diva, A.J. Brown does this, that, and the other thing, and then we find out it wasn't him tweeting it, and he's like, oh, that's how you really feel? So let's be careful until we know exactly who's saying this stuff. But the point of the conversation is I know that there are players that feel this way about this city. How could there not be? There's fans that feel this way about the media. And there are also fans that are overly critical of the teams. We're all guilty of it from time to time. I want to know which side you think needs to really bend to the other side's way of existing. Players need to be tougher. Media needs to be softer, for lack of a better term. 610-632-0975 is the number to jump in. And there's a very interesting aspect of this, too, because when I see that tweet from A.J. Brown's Twitter account, and when I read the tweet from Derek Gunn saying that Jalen Hurts was pulled in a bunch of different directions because of the contract, and that when Big Dom was suspended, Nick Sirianni was having more interaction with players that did not seem to be proper interaction on the sidelines, the arguments and everything like that, I say, part of being in a city like this and dealing with the media scrutiny, that falls on the leadership of the organization to tell the players, hey, I know you played in, just using A.J. Brown for an example, I know you played in Tennessee before this. I'm sure Nashville's nice. Been down there. Country music, good whiskey. It is not the same spotlight as you're going to have here in Philadelphia. So when the media comes after you, and they will, because we come for everybody in this town, you could think about the greatest athlete in the history of this city. Whoever it was once ripped apart, sometimes rightfully, sometimes unfairly, by the fan base and the media in this town. I don't think that's wrong. I think that's just reality. You, as the coach of that team, if you're going to be a guy who's not calling the offense, who's not calling the defense, who's had your responsibilities chopped down after the failure of this past season, I think one of your main priorities should be to make sure that your players have their wits about them when it comes to what they're dealing with in the locker room and what they're going to deal with over the course of a season. So, as much as I think the players need to accept this, it's on the coach to set the proper expectation for how to handle it. And Nick Sirianni is in question already for the football aspect of his job. But because of the way this past season ended, I think it's now fair to start to consider the aspect of his job that is most important this coming season, which is keep the locker room together, make sure the players are all focused and ready to handle their business when Vic Fangio tells them what they do defensively and what Kellen Moore tells them to do offensively. And if this is how the players truly feel, if this is how the narrative is building in the Eagles locker room that, well, the media is being unfair or whatever, stuff like that, and we don't know for sure, but I know that that's a feeling that has existed in the past, well, that's something that Nick Sirianni has to be aware of and has to get under control. He's got minimal responsibility as far as an NFL head coach goes. He needs to focus on this. He needs to get this team in a position where they don't look like as much of a circus as they did at the end of this past season. 610-632-0975 is the phone number to jump into the program. By the way, we are live on YouTube on 97.5 The Fanatic YouTube page if you want to watch the show today. So appreciate everyone there on the YouTube chat. Let's open up the phone lines. Let's go to Heavy in Huntington Valley first. Heavy, you're live here on the Fanatic.
Yo, bro, what's good?
What's up, Heavy?
What I'd really like to know is what happened in these exit interviews where the consensus was everybody likes Nick Sirianni and everybody wants him to stay as the head coach. And now today we hear all this about him being, aggressive on the sidelines toward the other players. I mean, it's very confusing because...
Yeah. Well, Heavy, I'll tell you this. Some players enjoy being coached in different ways. Some players might like that confrontation on the sidelines. To some players, that makes you feel like, okay, he cares. He's willing to go back and forth with me. He cares about winning these games. Like, that's not necessarily a bad thing that Nick Sirianni is in heated discussions with players as long as they're productive. So, and we also have heard from a couple players. We haven't heard from all of them. Like, Britton Covey said he likes Nick Sirianni. Jason Kelsey defended Nick Sirianni. A.J. Brown has said it's not Nick Sirianni. Devontae Smith has said that. That's 4 players out of 50-plus. So we don't know for sure who said what, but it sounds like enough players defended him that they were willing to give him another shot at this head coaching job.
Well, yeah, I can see that. But in regards to Jalen Hurts and the pressure, I mean, bro, you played at the most scrutinized college in the entire country,
right,
for a few years. Like, you understand what it's like to be at the top in the pressures.
Well, not totally have, because they didn't have NIL when he was in college. And when the money gets involved, it's a totally different animal altogether. Like Jalen Hurts might have been doing selling cars down at some Tuscaloosa Dodge or whatever, which is fine. But the endorsements that come with the status that he has in the NFL, the amount of things that he has to do outside of the game, that just raises at the NFL level. That's higher than anything he had to deal with at Alabama or Oklahoma.
Come on, bro. We know Jalen Hurts wasn't washing their cars, man.
No, I know. I'm just saying. Like, this is a different level of scrutiny, and appreciate the call, man. Like, the quarterback of Alabama is a very scrutinized position. Same for Oklahoma. It's not the same thing as the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's not the same thing as the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles who went to the Super Bowl, who got MVP votes, who got MVP consideration again this year. Like, he wasn't doing Hulu commercials down in Alabama. He just wasn't. There is another level to this. So I totally believe that Jalen Hurts' new status is a challenge for him to adjust to. It doesn't mean he's not capable of doing it. I'm not saying, well, Jalen Hurts got paid. He's got to do all these commercials now. He's going to stink forever. Like, no, that's not it. But can I buy that this year, adjusting to being a new level of famous, a new level of popular, a new level of paid, that was something that Jalen Hurts was trying to figure out? I could totally buy that. And I don't know that I fault him for that. I think that's just the nature of growing into your career when it comes to being a top-level NFL quarterback. And, I mean, for all the faults of the Eagles, it's not like they imploded all season long. I still look at coaching as the bigger issue. I don't look at Jalen Hurts and say, he's the reason the Eagles collapsed. Like, did he struggle at points? Sure. Were there times maybe where he had his mind not like other places while he was playing the game, but he had other responsibilities and managing those was difficult for him? Certainly possible. Do I still have faith in Jalen Hurts to play quarterback for this team? 100%. I totally do. So I'm not worried about that, but I do understand that that's within the realm of possibility from this past year, considering what changed in Jalen Hurts' NFL career from 2022 to 2023. 610-632-0975 is the phone number. Let's go to Frank in South Philly next. Frank, you're live here on the Fanatic.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good. What's up?
Two things. Hello, you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, two things about what the gentleman you just said. Like, he's handled it great, that change of lifestyle within a 5-year period, getting to the top of the game, made it to the NFL and became a franchise quarterback. Like, he's handled it great. But we have no idea how that is, man. That's a lot, man,
Right.
to deal with.
No, you're right. I don't know that the average person can comprehend everything that comes with being an NFL quarterback. There's so much that even we don't see. So, yeah, I have faith in Jalen Hurts, though, Frank. I'm not worried about him at all.
Right. And with the AJ thing, I think if he has someone putting out stuff on his Twitter account, and they put something that's controversial and he doesn't like it, he should have them take it off. No, if he leaves it on there, then that means he agrees with what was posted. I mean, that's what I think.
Yeah, listen, Frank, I totally understand your point there. Thank you for the call. Like, that's almost getting too granular with it. Like, who's running A.J. Brown's Twitter account probably isn't worth our time. Like, we have bigger issues to focus on when it comes to the Eagles. How the offense is going to look better. How the defense is going to improve as far as the roster is concerned, and what Howie Roseman's doing with 8 draft picks this year. Like, all of that is more important than who's running A.J. Brown's Twitter. I don't know if he's, like, locked out of it, and the guy changed the password and someone else has it and he can't log in. There's nothing he can do. Like, I don't know. Maybe A.J. Brown just doesn't care. And he's like, remember, he scrubbed his social media because he didn't want to deal with, like, the distraction of it. He talked about that during the season and after the season was over. It could just be that he's like, I don't care what anyone thinks about me. I don't care what anyone tweets from my account. I'm just going to focus on the offseason and resting and then starting my workouts to get ready for 2024. Like, I don't care about social media. I'm cutting that out of my life entirely. So I don't know. I'm not too worried, honestly, about how this affects A.J. Brown, because I don't think A.J. Brown's too worried about how this affects him. But what is important is how this conversation is definitely something that other people have had, other players in this city have thought, other media members in this city have written columns on and talked about, is the relationship between the media and the players. And I think it's a good a good kindling to the fire of this conversation. Whether it was A.J. Brown or not, there is a feeling in this city that's a constant battle between how the fan base and the media perceive the teams and treat the players. And I'm not saying that you're doing anything wrong. I'm saying that there have been a billion players in this city, and there have been a good number of them that at points in their career have said, yo, what's your guys' deal? Fan base is being too tough on me. What's your guys' deal? You wrote this column? Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's happened before. And I would like to, this is just me, I would like to get to a place where this city is more compatible in those different parts of the sports scene. Fan base, media, players, and the team in general. I would like us to all be able to coexist. Now, I know that's not totally realistic, but I think we could be closer than where we're at right now. And part of that, like a lot of you out there listening, are in relationships, are married right now. What is one of the most important things about that? You got to have a little give and take. It's not just one side of the equation says this is how it's going to be, and the other side has to deal with that. There has to be a little bit of an agreement between the sides, and there has to be some altering of the way you go about living life. Sometimes you can't, I don't know, go to the bar at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday and see your buddies because your wife's going to want you home. And like, that's just, maybe you want to, but you accept that you can't anymore because there's give and take, because she lets you golf on Sunday mornings. And that's how you build a healthy relationship. Like, we need to understand that no one's 100% right and no one's 100% wrong, but there could be a better way to handle this in this city. And I'm on the mission to try and find that, because I think a more healthy relationship between the fans, the media, and the players leads to a sports city that has more success. I think that could make it more fun to play here, more fun to be a fan here, and that leads to more players wanting to come here, better teams, more success. Not that Philly hasn't been successful. We're in a really good stretch right now of success when it comes to basically all of our sports teams. I'm just trying to take this to the next level. And it's an interesting conversation that stems from what's going on with the Eagles right now. So where do you stand? Does the media need to be a little bit kinder to the players in certain instances? Not like pandering to the players and saying, you can't do anything wrong, but maybe taking it easy on them sometimes when they could absolutely rip them apart for comments or a performance? Or do the players need to just accept that this is part of playing in the city like Philadelphia, and if you're going to play here, you're going to have thick skin and deal with it and know that it's not personal. They're going to do it to the player who plays here after you. They did it to the player who played here before you, but you just kind of have to understand that's part of the deal and not take it personally to the point where it starts affecting the chemistry of the team or how the fan base perceives the chemistry of the team. So which side are you on? 610-632-0975 is the number to jump into the program. And yes, we're going to discuss coming up where Nick Sirianni stands in all of this. Because I already told you a little bit that he should be the one that sets the expectation for the team as far as what they're going to have to deal with on and off the field and how to keep the locker room together in spite of that. But it doesn't seem like he did an exceptional job of that this past year. It also partially falls on the leadership of the team, which we'll talk about. But Nick Sirianni is going to be a constant part of the equation, being that he's the head football coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. And I'm going to question, once again, his ability to do that position to the level that we need him to in this city. So we'll get into that coming up on the other side. I'm Connor Thomas, filling in for Andrew Salchunas here on 97.5 Midday. Silvana Kelleher on the board. We're back after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
I'm Silvana Kelleher, and this report is sponsored by Christian. Plumbing problems got you drained? Let the Christian team of plumbers get you flowing again this month. Only get a free camera inspection with any drain cleaning. Call Christian today, 833-842-1989. The Flyers tacked on a win last night against the Chicago Blackhawks. The final score 3-1 with goals from Garnet Hathaway, Travis Konechny, and Travis Sanheim. They will be back in action this Saturday against the Rangers at 3 p.m., which of course can be heard here live. The Sixers return from the All-Star break tonight, hosting the New York Knicks. Philadelphia native Kyle Lowry is expected to make his debut in a Sixers uniform tonight as well. Tip-off is at 7 and can be heard here live on 97.5 The Fanatic. The Phillies inch closer to opening day as their first spring training game is this Saturday against the Blue Jays at 1:07 p.m. 35 more days until opening day at Citizens Bank Park. I'm Silvana Kelleher. Breaking news all day, every day is here. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
ESPN's Tim McManus on the best show ever.
Top guy right now is getting paid $34 million, and Reddick is getting paid $15 million a year.
Providing insight on the Eagles as they look to 2024.
It's not a 0% chance that he moves on. It only takes one team to say, I'll give a second round plus for Hassan Reddick. I'll pay him $20 million.
Listen weekday afternoons 2 to 6 for the real and inside story on the Birds from Tyrone Johnson and Ricky Vitalico. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Hey guys, Bob Cooney here. Imagine if your favorite casino came with an undo button. Well, guess what? You get that with FanDuel Casino's Play It Again. Get up to $1,000 back if you're down after your first day. Play your favorite table games and hundreds of slots for real cash. See why FanDuel Casino's the #1 rated online casino app? I've told you so many times how much fun it is to look at their daily and their weekly promotions. And when you play with a live dealer. And should you ever have any questions, the best in-class customer support team, they are there all the time. Sign up for FanDuel Casino with FanDuel.com/Bob today and play it again with up to $1,000 back if you're down after your first day. That's FanDuel.com/Bob.
21 plus and President PA must not have previously placed any wager on FanDuel Sportsbook, FanDuel Casino, Betfair Casino, Mohegan Sun Casino, or Stardust Casino. Refund issued is non-withdrawable casino-only site credit that expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/casino. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG.
At Fisher Investments, we may seem like other money managers, but we're different.
What makes you so different than the rest of us?
We ensure clients receive unparalleled service at every step of the relationship.
Tell me more.
Our investment counselors focus on service over sales, prioritizing clients' needs.
How do you make money?
We don't sell any commission-based products. We have a simple management fee based on the value of our client's portfolio. So we do better when our clients do better.
What about client portfolios?
We get to know each client, their finances, family, health, lifestyle, and more, and then we tailor a portfolio based on their specific goals and needs.
Your clients really come first then, huh?
Yes, we make them a top priority. Our goal is helping them achieve a comfortable retirement.
Wow, maybe we are different.
At Fisher Investments, we're clearly different. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com.
Investing in securities involved.
possibilities. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com. Andrew Salchunas, 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Connor Thomas filling in for Andrew Salchunas today. Andrew down in Jamaica. I'm sure he's got some really nice weather down there. And doing a conversation up here on the drama surrounding the Philadelphia Eagles and what in the world is going on with the relationship between the media and the players. And then the fan base is not an uninvolved third party here. It might feel like, as a fan, you're just, no pun intended, just sitting on the sidelines, sitting in the stands, observing. But the fan base affects things as well. And I think that the way that we all interact with each other could be better, right? I don't think we have a perfect relationship between those three parts in this city. But I'll be the first to admit when I don't know something. And I don't know what the solution is. I don't know who needs to change the way they operate. Does the media need to be a little bit more forgiving? Do the players need to be a little bit tougher? Does the fan base need to be a little bit more understanding of both sides of that? Or is there something more that we need to change? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this really triumvirate of Philadelphia sports that's affecting the way that, not just the way the Eagles locker room is working right now, because I think there are other issues that are internal too. I don't know if they're major or not, but I'm sure this is not just, the fans are booing us, so we're going to yell at each other. Like, no, it's deeper than that, but I'm interested to hear what your thought is on who needs to change their approach to the way they interact with the other two parties in Philadelphia sports. We're going to get Silvana's thoughts on that in just a second. I do want to remind you, the 10 o'clock hour here on The Fanatic is brought to you by Window Nation. Take advantage of Window Nation's 50% off sale on all style windows. Plus, make no down payment with no payments and no interest for 12 full months. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com. Silvana, good morning.
Good morning.
Now, you've heard me go for about an hour on this and breaking down. I'm not trying to pick a side here. I'm trying to start a conversation, allow people to think internally and look inward about the way that they handle their sports fandom and also how they judge what the media does and what the fans do, or the players do when they interact with each other in this city. So when you hear all of this, what needs to change when it comes to this relationship that is being highlighted by a tweet that may or may not be A.J. Brown, but it's a sentiment that I know is shared by athletes in the city and has been before?
Oh, gosh. You know what? It is really difficult to try and pick a side, but I think I have to say that the media has to be a little bit more forgiving, only because on certain aspects, if it comes to how they're playing the game, they're not living up to their expectation or, they just have been playing straight up bad, whatever. That is warranted, and they should be able to take that criticism. That is a part of the job.
Right. If a player stinks and the media says they stink.
You cannot get mad at them for saying that you stink, and you can't get mad at fans. However, there should be a boundary between fans, like, DMing players. That, I think, should never happen.
Yeah, that's a reality of the modern age in sports and social media. That exists in the world.
They would never say that to them to their face, and I think that's how fans should think when they comment on other people. When it comes to their game, you can point out flaws and, what they can work on and what has been letting them down about them, but you don't have to say it so brutally harsh or, use names or whatever. But when it comes to the personality of the players, dude, if I was called a diva, I would lose my mind. I would not be able to take that lightly. So I think when it comes to commenting on players of how they are as a human and their personality, I think that can chill out a little bit because you don't really know.
Right, that's the thing. I'm not asking the media to not comment on players playing poorly or anything like that. And it's really just more the tweeting and the social media and the picking apart of the dynamic of the locker room. There are some things that, and this goes against the idea of reporting, because reporting is supposed to tell us what's going on. But there are some things that are just, it's better off if I just leave that be. Out of respect for the team and what they're trying to accomplish, it's better off that this does not become public. And I think that's a hard fight for some people, because it's a great comment here on the YouTube chat from Mopar, who says, Connor, media does whatever they can to dig up dirt because it sells. period. It is what it is. Just accept it. Like, the media's job is to sell papers, get clicks, like, write stories, get people to listen to stuff. Like, I'm not coming on here trying to do an uninteresting show to protect the integrity of, like, some people or players. Like, no, I want people to listen to 97.5 The Fanatic. So I'm going to try and do the most interesting content possible. Part of this is you have to try and believe that people are doing things for the right reasons, and people aren't always. That's why I think the easiest thing to expect is the players to be, and maybe tougher isn't the right word. Like, I think the easiest fix to this is to say, yo, man, if you're going to play in Philadelphia, if you're going to coach in Philadelphia, if you're going to be a member of one of these teams, the fan base is going to be really hard on you at times. The media is going to scrutinize everything you do. That is the nature of playing in this city. They don't mean it personally, but they're going to come after you sometimes justly, sometimes unjustly, you might feel. The best way to handle it, the only way to handle it, is put your head down, go to work, and do what you can do.
I think that's the best thing that they can do.
Right, and that's possible to do. We've seen that before. Is it an unfair ask to say, hey, players, you're going to get a raw deal, but you got to toughen up? Yes, that's an unfair ask. But that's part of playing in a tough city like Philadelphia, a big market like Philadelphia. It's not going to change. So you can play somewhere else, and the stadium's not going to be packed, and the fan base isn't going to live and die on everything. And when you have that championship parade, you're going to have, 100,000 people instead of 5 million. But that's just kind of the nature of being under the microscope more in a city like Philadelphia. It's not a fair ask, but it's probably the easiest, because you can't ask media to not do their job and not try and get clicks and not try and report. And I told you earlier on in the show, you can't change the nature of the Philadelphia fan base. It's like the tides. It's an unstoppable force of nature. And you're wasting your time trying to tell the fans you need to treat this player different or act differently.
It's a part of the identity.
Right. So that's why I think the easiest thing, not that it's a fair ask, but because it might be the only realistic solution, is that players kind of just have to accept that this is the nature of this city, and it's not meant personally by most people. I know there's absolute cretins out there in DMs trying to say, oh, you dropped that pass, I hope you have the worst rest of your life ever. Like, people like that are terrible, and they exist just across the internet. But I'm talking about rational, normal human beings are still going to be tough on you in this city. You just kind of have to accept that it's not personal, and that's part of the just whole process of playing here in Philadelphia.
Especially when you are losing. Fingers point rather quickly, and, they try and find what is the root cause of the losing, what is happening, and then it spirals out of control sometimes.
Right. And the Eagles had that happen in the locker room, right? The Eagles fell apart on the field and off the field this year. Now, I don't know what the locker room issues stemmed from, and I don't know that they'll carry over, but it's very clear that this team collapsed in every aspect of the organization down the stretch. They had no answers. They realized they had no answers. They got upset they had no answers, and then it just became not a great environment top to bottom. Does that mean it's going to continue? No. Does it mean that I'm going to call out individual players without knowing who was responsible for what went wrong? No. Does it mean that all of a sudden we're going to forget that coaching was not the biggest issue with this team and acknowledge the fact that they changed the offensive coordinator and changed the defensive coordinator? No, we need to realize that the Eagles may have already fixed this by just putting themselves in position to play better football next year under Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore.
Winning cures all.
It does, and I think they've done a great job with the coaching hires to put themselves in position to do that. But there is part of the nature of the city that will always exist, and I think especially with the way the Eagles' season ended right now, I think the Sixers have come to terms with it, and that's just reality. We've seen Joel Embiid spar with the fan base before, but I think he understands because he is a troll at heart. He gets that it's just part of the gig. The Flyers are not as much under the microscope, especially now in a rebuild. Nice win last night over Chicago, but that they're not really the focus of the city right now, so they don't have to worry about it as much. And I've talked about it with the Phillies and how I think they don't get a fair shake based on the success they've had over the past 2 years. But at the same time, the Eagles are always going to be the focal point of this town. And that's why I think it's most important that they understand how to handle the scrutiny that comes with that. And that falls on the head coach, right? Because with Nick Sirianni, you've got to be, like, he's already told us. We've been told by the organization that after this past year, they do not have faith in him to handle the offense. They never had faith in him to handle the defense because he's not a defensive-minded head coach, and that's fine. Like, defense was never supposed to be his specialty, but he's not calling plays. He's not doing any of that anymore. His responsibilities have been significantly chopped down following the way that this past season ended. So if that's going to be the case, that means that the parts of your job that you are still doing have to be flawless. And one of those things is putting the players in position to be successful in the locker room, day to day, and dealing with outside influence. You know, Nick Saban talked about rat poison, and then that carried over, like Jalen Hurts talked about it too, and you don't want to eat the rat poison, the outside voices. You don't want to listen, good or bad. You don't want to listen to that. Well, that's on the, what was Nick Saban to Jalen Hurts? He was the head coach. That is on the head coach to build that culture. And when I see stuff like players interacting with fans and the media this way, I say, okay, man. Head coach, Nick Sirianni, you ain't calling plays. You ain't running an offensive scheme. You're not running the defense. Why don't you take care of business on this? What it sounds like from the Derek Gunn tweet, which, again, talked about what's going on with when Big Dom was suspended, Nick Sirianni was having trouble controlling his emotions on the sidelines.
That is actually, that tweet made my jaw drop. Like, this is a full-grown adult that we are talking about.
Right.
That is leading a huge group of men.
Again, I'll read you this tweet verbatim from Derek Gunn, who has a close relationship with numerous Eagles players, is in the locker room, knows what's going on with the team. According to sources, Jalen, big contract, pulled in numerous directions on and off the field, put him under a lot of pressure he didn't handle well. ... Big Dom suspended, controls Sirianni's emotions on sideline. In his absence, Nick gets in numerous arguments with players, coaches during games. Like, take the Jalen thing out of it, because I think Jalen Hurts is going to be fine. I just think he went through an adjustment.
Yeah.
He went through some growing pains. And I don't even think it affected him that much. I thought his play was good. I just don't think it was remotely as good as it was in 2022.
Yes.
We'll cross that bridge when we come to the actual preseason and the season coming up. But I think Jalen Hurts is going to be fine. I put that more on coaching. The issue with the Nick Sirianni thing is I put that entirely on coaching and the head coach. Because if this is true, if what Derek Gunn is saying is correct, and Big Dom controls Sirianni's emotions on the sideline, and if he's not there, the arguments with players and coaches increase, just make Big Dom the damn head coach of the football team already.
Yeah.
Because
What?
you have to be able to trust the head coach to keep his composure. And you have to be able to trust that Nick Sirianni, the guy whose basically only job left as head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, is to make sure that everyone keeps their composure and coexists and build that locker room chemistry, be a vibes guy. I'll tell you what, you know who's a bad vibes guy? The person with the worst vibes. And if he's got to have Big Dom by his side to tell him, yo, don't go yell at Jalen Hurts right now. Like, don't be face-to-face with Jason Kelsey yelling about something right now. That shows a lack of restraint to me as the head coach, and that's one of the few things that Nick Sirianni still has as his responsibility. So that worries me. When you hear that about Nick Sirianni, does it make you even more worried about him this coming season in his limited role as a head coach now for the Philadelphia Eagles? Or do you see it and say, yeah, but this past year was rough and winning cures everything, and I think they're going to be a better team next year? Because I think they'll be better. That just makes me worry about, even further, the head coach that, in my opinion, this is just my personal opinion, and maybe I'm wrong on this, and I would love to be. I would not have brought Nick Sirianni back as the head coach of the Eagles. I thought it was a complete collapse worthy of his job. And unfortunately, Well, not unfortunately, I should say, but I should say the Eagles chose to go in a different direction than what I would have done. Hopefully, I am proven completely wrong on this. But that's how I feel right now. And this information from Derek Gunn doesn't make me feel any better. Where are you mentally on the Philadelphia Eagles head coach and your level of trust in him? 610-632-0975 is the phone number to jump in. And there is a chance, right? Going back to that comment we got from Mopar on the YouTube about media just tries to dig stuff up. It is what it is. That's their job to do. There's a chance it's all being overblown. So we need to understand that as well. But my goodness, I do trust what Derek Gunn has to say, and I watched this team collapse, and I got to point the finger at somebody, and it was more than just, the coaching was poor. The coaching was poor, and then the issue compounded, and that's how the locker room issues seem to become a thing, and that falls on the head coach. So what level of faith do you have in Nick Sirianni? And also, how does the media and the fans and the players, how do they all have to interact when it comes to the city of Philadelphia? Could we be doing a better job to build a culture in this city that breeds sports success? Sometimes we have to look inward, and sometimes we have to ask more from the other people in this ecosystem, the players, the media, the fans, whatever party you're a part of. So what needs to change? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Let's go to Jay on a cell next. Jay, you're live here on the Fanatic.
Oh, what's going on, Connor?
What's up, Jay? How you feeling?
I'm good. Look, in this situation, man, I think it's all on the media because really, these two stories that we talked about today is non-stories. They really are.
Okay,
So
tell me why.
Because, really, what's the reason for them to say the contract affected Jalen? Okay, stuff happens in life, but it's really a non-story. I mean, that could be anybody. So for it to come out and say that affected Jalen, I really don't think it did. I think it's just filler and everything. And I respect Derek Gunn, but it's the same thing with the AJ tweet. Philadelphia fans, we so-called so tough and the smartest fans in the world and everything. We can talk all day about people, but when they say something, they can't say that. Why they say that? What did they do?
Yeah. Jay, I know what you're saying, man. You're absolutely right. If we're going to ask the players to be tougher, we've got to understand our own faults as well. Part of this is internal, and part of this is asking more from the people around us.
And because people make money, that don't change their feelings and all that. I mean, we talk about every day. You listen to sports every day. You just hear it out. Look, the other teams win. They not just going to sit there and let the Eagles win or the Phillies win or anybody. You win or lose games, but the fans take it personal, and then you want to hide behind that shield, oh yeah, we the toughest things in the world. But as soon as somebody, why they saying this? They shouldn't be. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So on my end, it's the media because, like I said, the thing with Jalen, that's a natural thing.
So Jay, just so I'm getting your point right, you think the media makes too much of some things that they shouldn't sometimes?
Yeah,
and that leads to the fan base being upset about it, and that leads to the players giving it back to the fan base, which sometimes the fans can't take.
Yeah, because some stories they put out is non-stories. It's just for that. I mean, that's just common sense. It ain't got to be jail.
Yeah.
Like they said, it took away from his stuff. That's just and they were saying he need to interact with people. So when you ask who said that, they're like, it's the teammates. So that's just like you. Say you went to work on Monday. Oh, I can't do this. I can't do that. All right. Tuesday, you hit the lottery. Then Wednesday, what's the natural reaction people going to say? They kind of say on Wednesday, I can't do something. Oh, the money changed, or he not doing this and that.
Right.
That's a non-story to me.
I got you, Jay. Listen, man, it's a great point by you, and I appreciate you checking in. Thank you for the call. I love the scenario where I hit the lottery, too, by the way. My goodness. Fingers crossed. Lord, help me out. But, no, Jay's right. There are times where there are stories that media members get into. We do it here. Listen, I'm guilty of this, too. Part of the job is you have to create engaging content, right? And there are ways to do it where you do it in a responsible way. There are also easy ways to do it where you make stories out of nothing. And not everyone always takes the right route to doing that. Let's take the worst example ever. Chris Sims just comes out and says whatever he wants about Jalen Hurts is the 800th best quarterback in the NFL and puts him down just so that people get mad and click on his stuff. That is an example of doing it the wrong way. But it's the easy way, and some people take that. I swear I do not mean this to anybody specifically in this city, but I am sure that there are people in the media in Philadelphia that take the easy way to that. That's just the nature of things. Some people do the job the right way. Some people take shortcuts. Here's the thing. Some fans are good fans. Some fans are the fans of DMs, like complaining to players' spouses or saying stuff about players' families when it's just a game. And some players are good at their job and some players are bad at their job. Like, there are good and bad of every group. So Jay is absolutely right. Sometimes the media does make more out of things than they need to. I think what we've come down to, like so far in this conversation, is that there just needs to be a better understanding of why each group is doing what they're doing. We need to understand that if the players come back at us, it's because we're tough on them, and we need to be able to be tough back. If the fan base is upset at you, we're passionate. That's just the nature of playing in Philadelphia. And if the media is trying to make something out of nothing, they are getting paid to do so. It is their living. It is their job. Writing a story is the same thing as catching a pass, getting a basket, scoring a goal, hitting a home run. Like, that is what they are paid to do. And sometimes you go about it the wrong way. And that's times where you should be able to go back and forth with that person. But I think that there is this misunderstanding between some players that come to the city and the other two parties, that the interaction is not what it needs to be. The whole, oh, you're being too tough on me? That's Philadelphia, bro. It's going to be tough here. We've got to then also look internally and say, as fans and as media members, if you are one, like, you have to understand that if you're tough on them and they're going to be tough on you back, you have to be willing to accept that and just get on with it. That's just life in general. But I think the Eagles are a really good experiment that shows where the interaction issues are between the media and the players. And then the fan base is roped in there too when it comes to Philadelphia sports. And I think it's just a very interesting proving ground for what's going on right now and how the modern age with social media and everything has changed the game a little bit. So I thought it was a really interesting conversation. Again, I'll just say this one more time because we've been getting a bunch of tweets. Oh, it's not A.J. Brown's account. It's not really him tweeting. First of all, it is his account. Like, it is actually A.J. Brown's main account. If there is somebody else tweeting from it, certainly possible it's not him who's sending the tweets. And there have been teammates of A.J. Brown who says that's not him tweeting. Namely, Darius Slay was like, this ain't A.J. I'm not saying that, like, A.J. Brown hates the media. That's not the point of this conversation. I'm saying that tweet has sparked a conversation about how players feel about the media in this city. It doesn't have to be A.J. Brown. It's just players in general in Philadelphia have had plenty of times where they disagree with the fan base or the media. And frankly, I think we could be doing it better from everybody's perspective. But I want to know what you think needs to change at 610-632-0975. And now, coming up on the other side, we're going to get to a little bit of a happier topic. The Sixers aren't in a great spot right now, but when they play tonight for the first time since the All-Star break, they're going to be, hopefully, in a much healthier spot than where they were when we last saw them. And also, we've got a very fun homecoming tonight as Kyle Lowry is set to take the floor at the Wells Fargo Center for the first time wearing a Sixers jersey. I mean, my goodness, this is going to be fun. A lot of people have wanted Kyle Lowry forever in a Sixers uniform. So we're going to jump into that. And I have a fun question for you to think back on from years past, players past, some of your favorite players that are from the area here in Philadelphia. I'll break down exactly what the question is on that, and we'll talk a little bit about the Kyle Lowry impact on the Sixers as they get ready to start their final 2-month stretch of the season tonight against the New York Knicks. I'm Connor Thomas. This is 97.5 Middays. Savannah Keller on the board. By the way, filling in for Andrew Salchunas on vacation in Jamaica. He'll be back next week. And we're back after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
I'm Savannah Kelleher, and this Fanatic Update is brought to you by Wawa. Wawa's new Snack and Go wraps make anytime snack time. Try flavors like buffalo or honey hot chicken, only $2.49. Gotta
Now more with Andrew Salchunas on 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Connor Thomas back live with you here, filling in for Andrew Salchunas. He'll be back next week. Silvana Kelleher on the board. And we were having a very interesting discussion stemming from a maybe A.J. Brown tweet. It came from his account. We don't know if it was him or not. But the point that was made in the tweet is something that is universal. It's not just A.J. Brown related. So I think it started a very interesting conversation of it was critical of how the media here in Philadelphia does their work. And part of me understands the sentiment from A.J. Brown. We are very tough on our players and teams in this city. But part of me is also like, that is a known thing. Like, you come to Philadelphia, one of the first things that you are told is this is a tough place to play. They will love you forever if you win, and if you lose, they're going to let you hear about it. And the same goes for the media. It's just a higher level of scrutiny place. And I think part of the issue is that players don't prepare themselves properly for that. But also, I can't say like, oh, the players just have to fix their attitude. No, that's not it. There are times where we go too far in this city. So maybe there's a reaction that says, we need to put, whether it's the fans or the media, the players in better position where they're not constantly feeling like we're attacking them unfairly. So it's a very philosophical conversation and one that we had some good commentary on. We're going to continue that a little bit later on in the show, but I want to discuss something interesting about the Sixers because tonight the Sixers will go back in action. They're at the Wells Fargo Center. Sixers, New York Knicks. That's going to be a really fun matchup. The Knicks are having a really good season, a couple nice trade deadline acquisitions themselves. The Sixers, they're getting healthier. Obviously,
my God.
My good, right? It felt like there was a month where they just didn't have a full starting lineup. And they won't tonight because Joel Embiid is still recovering from his meniscus tear. But you're going to be back closer to what you expect this Sixers team to look like. And one of the guys that is going to make a debut tonight, Kyle Lowry. You know everything about Kyle Lowry, right? You saw him in Toronto when he got that ring. He was part of that team. Not to bring up that year again because we all know how that ended. But we know he's a local guy. We know that, like, Cardinal Doherty, Pat Egan's favorite player. Like, I'm sure he's stoked to have Kyle Lowry playing for the Sixers. But I know also that we're a very parochial city. And when people make their homecomings, it's a nice feel-good story. Like, it's the same everywhere, but also, like, let's be realistic, right? We were having this conversation when it came to the fans and media and players interaction. Part of it is you need to be self-aware. And part of being self-aware in Philadelphia is understanding this. Nobody loves Philadelphia like we love Philadelphia. Like, we love us some us. It's the old T.O. quote, right? I love me some me. Like, but that's just how we are in this city, and that's fine. I mean, we're proud of the city. We're proud of people from here. And it's cool to see Kyle Lowry, after a long, storied NBA career, make his way back home. I think it's more than just a homecoming. I have a kind of side topic question based on that I'll give you in a second, but I think the Kyle Lowry acquisition is more than just, oh, it's cool. He's from Philadelphia. I think that he can still be a difference maker in certain ways on the court and more off the court. So the impact you can expect him to have on the floor, I think, is minimal, right? He is very similar, maybe not exactly identical, but very similar to what Pat Bev brought you. He might have a game or two where he goes off and scores, but mostly he's going to be a veteran ball handler, a strong defender, a guy that knows what he's doing, and a mentor to some of the younger players at his position or at the guard positions. And that's basically going to be Kyle Lowry's impact on the court. He is a guy that's going to go out there and not kill you, get his job done, handle his business like the veteran he is. And it might not be, wow, what a game Kyle Lowry had, but it's going to be, okay, you are in a better place overall because he just steadies the ship for the second unit. Because as I imagine, he's going to be coming off the bench for the Sixers with Maxey being an all-star at the point guard position. But I want you to listen to this because Keith Pompey was on these airwaves yesterday, and he talked a little bit about what Kyle Lowry can bring to this team and the leadership factor that a player like Kyle Lowry brings with him to the organization he plays for. So here's what Keith Pompey had to say about the acquisition.
He is a leader, a veteran, and also he's motivated, right? Over the grand scheme of things, I think the best thing that Kyle is going to be able to provide is leadership, and also he's going to be an extension of the coach. He's going to have guys buying into what Nick Nurse is selling. But I do think that, you know, the way he left the Miami Heat, and I do believe that he is going to be extremely motivated to go out there and nurture Maxey. And not only that, to prove people that he still has it.
That nurture Maxey part is really important because Kyle Lowry can be as motivated as he wants to be. And I mean this with all due respect to a player who has a great NBA resume. But he's 37 years old. Like, he can be super motivated. He's not the player he was 5, 7, 10 years ago. So I like that he's going to come in with a chip on his shoulder. Miami let him go. They sent him to Charlotte. He didn't even play with them, and he's looking for his second ring, and he's coming back to a place where he gets to play for the coach that helped him get his first one, Nick Nurse, up there at Toronto. Like, there is the motivation factor, right? But I think sometimes we read into that too much. Like, oh, this guy's motivated. Listen, if I got a shot to play in the NBA, I'd be motivated because I'd be like, wow, what an opportunity. Me? Barely 6 foot? NBA? Let's go. Doesn't mean I'm going to be good. Now, Kyle Lowry is a good NBA player. Like, he's a veteran, proven NBA player. So I don't mean like the guy's going to stink. I just mean even if he's motivated, we just talked about the level of impact he could possibly have. He's not going to be a 15 to 20 points per game guy because he's motivated. But what I think is really important, right, on top of the leadership, the steadying the ship when he's out there, taking care of the basketball, making smart moves, knowing what he's supposed to do on the court inside and out, that nurturing Tyrese Maxey thing is really, really important because Tyrese Maxey is getting the benefit of something, like a secondary benefit that I don't know that the Sixers intended him to. I don't know if this was the plan or not, but it's worked out in such an interesting way. The way that Tyrese Maxey has come up could have been very difficult. He was thrust onto as a late first-round pick, should have been an earlier first-round pick, but a later first-round pick, a team that was competing, a team full of veterans, a team that any time they had the opportunity, they traded young assets to bring in guys that were 5, 7, 10-year vets in the NBA to put alongside Joel Embiid. So on top of that, it was already going to be hard for Tyrese Maxey to earn his opportunity, considering he was a young player, and the plan was win now. But he starts, and I don't know if he learned anything from Ben Simmons, but plays alongside Ben Simmons. He learns a little bit about the NBA and just how to exist. The real first aspect for Tyrese Maxey was James Harden showed up. And the Sixers wanted James Harden to be alongside Joel Embiid because James Harden could score the basketball, could shoot it, was a great facilitator, and an all-time great player. But a secondary benefit of that was Tyrese Maxey learned the tricks of the trade from one of the best scoring guards in the history of the game. Like, I'm no James Harden fan with the way he left the city. I'm not. I'll be real with you. Guy annoys me. But it's undeniable that he knows how to score the basketball at an unbelievable rate compared to almost anybody who's ever played the game before. And he taught Tyrese Maxey everything he knows. Like, that step back. Every time Tyrese Maxey hits one of those James Harden patented step backs, Harden should get a quarter in his bank account. Like, that's just, you don't get to that point. You think Tyrese Maxey was learning that from Ben Simmons? You think he was learning that from DeAnthony Melton? No, like, there are scoring moves that only James Harden was able to use, that he's perfected, that he's like, yo, kid, come here. We're on the same team. I'm going to teach you how to do this. And then when Harden leaves, Maxi's like this now Maxi Harden hybrid, and he's this great scorer. Credit goes to Maxi for learning it and being such a great worker and learner and developing his game himself. But part of the credit also goes to James Harden, and Tyrese Maxey will tell you that himself. James Harden taught him a lot about the game. And then you bring in a guy like Patrick Beverley, who's going to continue to like teach you more about defense, tenacity, and everything like that. And now Kyle Lowry comes in, and the nurturing Maxey thing is super important because you look at Tyrese Maxey, what he is NBA Play-Doh. You remember Play-Doh, right? You can make that into anything. You can mold it to what you'd like it to be. You stick it on a newspaper, you pick it up, and it's got the whole page right there on it.
What?
Tyrese, you never did that?
No.
If you press Play-Doh to like a newspaper, then the like ink will stick in that on the Play-Doh, and it'll have the actual picture on it.
I had no idea.
Yeah, go buy some Play-Doh. You can
Yeah,
go
I'm
back and
about
try
to.
it. But my point is Tyrese Maxey is so good at learning from the players around him. And he is a sponge when it comes to the information of the game. Kyle Lowry is going to be a nice piece to help this team, but also he is very, very good defensively and very good at making these smart basketball plays. He's a wily point guard at this point in his career, a wily veteran. But I don't know that the Sixers make these moves saying this is what Tyrese Maxey needs to learn. I don't know if that's part of the equation. But they are turning him into a hybrid player of some of the greats of this past generation. He's got his own speed, James Harden's offensive game when it comes to creating space. You're going to combine Pat Bev and Kyle Lowry's defense, and you're going to put that all into one young player at the age of 23 who just made his first All-Star game. Like, this is going to be a bigger move for Tyrese Maxey as an individual, I think, than it will be for the Sixers as a team. And that's just, it's impressive how quickly he's learned from these guys. But that's just my little gushing over Tyrese Maxey segment of that conversation. What I really want to get into with Kyle Lowry, and you know he's going to be a leader on the floor, but I think this is a fun conversation. We love players who grew up in this area, who lived in Philadelphia or went to high school in Philadelphia or grew up in the surrounding area, South Jersey, all that stuff, and that end up coming back home and playing for our teams. Like I said, parochial city. We love us some us. So I want to know out there, you can chime in on this, 610-632-0975. What is the best homecoming in Philadelphia sports history? Your favorite homecoming. There are two types of players that I will allow to fit the archetype for this. The first one is the Kyle Lowry mold. A player that grew up in this area, might not ever played in the city professionally, but I mean like Cardinal Doherty, Nova, been in this area, and then goes and has their NBA career and comes back to Philadelphia and plays for the Sixers for the first time. Another great example of that would be Marcus Morris. We had that earlier this year. Sorry if I just stole one from somebody out there, but like that mold where they're from the city, and then they never play here professionally, and eventually they come back, and we're like, it's great to see the local kid come home and play for the team. The other one that I'll allow out there, because there are a couple of those, but I want to open this conversation a little bit more, is the player who starts their career in Philadelphia, doesn't really have all that much here or has a couple years here, and then goes out and makes something of themselves and comes back to Philadelphia. They don't have to be from the area, but started their career here and then came back later as a finished product of a player. This isn't just the NBA. Could be in any sport. But I'm interested to hear who else you have as far as your favorite Philadelphia homecomings. I think there's a lot of really, really good ones out there that are super interesting to get into. And I know you all have your favorites out there. A kid you watched in high school that was just like, could you imagine if they played for the Eagles or the Sixers or the Flyers or the Phillies, and then all of a sudden later on in their career they do. So I'll open up the phone lines to that as well. Fun little side topic to get into. Again, the number, 610-632-0975 to jump in. By the way, we're in the 11 o'clock hour, which is brought to you by Golden Nugget Jewelers, where Philly gets engaged. earlier we were also having a conversation about the relationship between the media and the players in this city, and also the fan base, because fans are part of the equation too, and how that relationship currently exists and how it could potentially be better. And all of this stems from the Eagles drama and how the media is playing a part in it, and a tweet that may or may not be from A.J. Brown but came from his Twitter account, basically calling out the Philadelphia media, saying that they're not doing their jobs correctly. So what needs to change for that relationship to improve? That's another conversation that we're having today. Let's go back to the phone lines. Let's talk to Uncle Frank on a cell. Uncle Frank, what's up, man?
Happy Thursday, squad.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
Oh, man. And, yes, there you are. How's my little diva? Just kidding.
Come on.
Just busting.
You heard.
I heard you.
Oh.
I heard you early.
Whatever.
So wait to carry the ball, guys, to the team.
Thank you, Uncle Frank.
Thank you.
Team players. So, I got to give a shout out, right? My little buddy boy, Jackson, grandson, turned 5 today, which is the same day Dr. J turned 75. So I call Jackson Dr. J.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, wait till he starts playing football. Oh my God, he's a beast. Loved your Plato analogies. That was spot on.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that was clever. So, you know, your industry must love all this local sports drama. I mean,
it does help a little bit.
Yeah, you guys, you should add Bryce Harper, Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Ed All to your Christmas card list. I mean, it's unprecedented. I got to tell you, I go way back. It's that, that a baseball star has 8 years left on a contract and he wants an extension. That really kind of chaps my ass a little bit. I mean, they're going to give it to him. I'm a big fan, but it makes you wonder.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think that's more agent related too, but that's a conversation
absolutely.
that goes deeper. Now, Uncle Frank, you've been around for a minute. You've seen how the media interacts with players. I'm sure you remember some of the great media player spats in the past. Like, what do you think needs to happen to make this work?
Well, I was going to say, first, okay. I was getting to the Eagles, right? And it's also unprecedented that, we're discussing the maturation process on an NFL head coach. I mean, so I'll go to Jalen, right? He's a so-called team leader, yes?
Right.
And I should have nipped it in the bud right away and not let it fester. So I think, and what happens when the parents, Kelsey, Graham, Cox leave the home, then what happens? I think there's got to be, like a T.O. Hugh Douglas kind of, it's got to be tabled and chewed on, and sooner than later. It all has to be addressed. And if it's not, Jalen doesn't table it, then somebody else has to step up. Otherwise, the start of the season is going to be like the end of last season.
Yeah, Frank, it's a great point, Uncle Frank. And thank you for checking in. Like, I'm actually going to – I have this to get into later on in the show, so we're going to talk about this. But the leadership with the Eagles, if you don't have faith in Nick Sirianni, we talked about that a little bit earlier, if you don't have faith in Nick Sirianni to keep the locker room together, well, then that's going to fall on somebody else. Because it can't just be, oh, well, the head coach isn't good enough, so the team falls apart. You don't just accept that if you don't have faith in Nick Sirianni. You expect someone else to step up. Ideally, he'll just handle his business. I don't have a lot of faith in him, too, at the moment. And I think that's a fair assessment considering how the season ended. And again, I hope I'm wrong, right? I hope he proves that he is still the head coach that we thought he was when this team went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. But it's hard to have faith in that after this past season. I think that's only fair. So when you look forward, you say, okay, what happens if we're right? And Nick Sirianni really needs Big Dom to help him control his emotions on the sidelines. And he's arguing with players and coaches and everything like that, and he can't keep the locker room together. What happens then? That is a really important question to have a contingency plan for leadership, and the Eagles are going to be in kind of a weird spot this next year. when it comes to that, depending on who's back and who actually retires. So we're going to get into that as we continue today's show. And I also want to, as we were on the Sixers and talking about Kyle Lowry, I want to look at the whole team as they get back into action tonight, who's supposed to be playing, how much healthier they could be, and what that means for what you should expect from them, and who should be the one leading that charge outside of their all-star, of course. So that conversation will continue on the other side. You can jump in on the phone lines on that at 610-632-0975. I'm Connor Thomas, filling in for Andrew Salchunas here on 97.5 Middays. Silvana Keller on the board. We're back after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
I'm Silvana Kelleher, and this Fanatic Update is brought to you by Christian. Plumbing problems got you drained. Let the Christian team of plumbers get you flowing again this month.
Connor Thomas back live with you, filling in for Andrew Salchunas, Silvana Kelleher on the board. And we were just talking a little bit of Sixers basketball with an interesting homecoming coming up tonight. Kyle Lowry is going to make his debut, the local kid from the city, spent his whole NBA career elsewhere, and finally now comes back to Philadelphia to debut for his hometown team. It's a great story, right? That just makes you feel good. That's the way sports are supposed to work. You're supposed to have moments like this. And I'm excited for Kyle Lowry. I'm also excited for the Sixers because I think they're getting a solid veteran player, and he's healthy, which you could really use at this point. And I'm excited for what Tyrese Maxey can potentially learn from the latest proven veteran at his position to share the court, or at least share the organization and locker room with him. That could turn him into an even better player than what we've already seen. And the goal for Tyrese Maxey clearly is to always keep improving. So that's something that I'm looking forward to seeing tonight. And also, with that in mind, we opened up a bit of a side topic. Your favorite Philadelphia sports homecoming. It can either be someone who grew up locally and then played for one of our teams, the Phillies, Sixers, Flyers, or Eagles, or someone who was initially drafted or assigned by one of the teams in the city and then leaves and then comes back. One of those players where you would call it exactly a homecoming. 610-632-0975 is the number to jump in on that, and a little bit more on the Sixers here, but I want to go to the phone lines because Matt in Riverside has a selection for us. Matt, you're live here on the Fanatic.
Hey, how you doing today?
Doing good. How about yourself, man?
Doing good. Never had a bad day. I'm pumped for Kyle Lowry's return. Loved him when he played, college around here. But I think a great person to put out there for the best homecoming's got to be Jamie Moyer, right? I mean, my man went to the 80 parade on his bike, came back here and won it in 2008.
That's an awesome pick by you. Local kid, Sellersville, PA, and he had a really long MLB career, but won the World Series here. So love that.
Yeah, and dug up the pitcher's mound, right? Took it with him. I mean, that was a great moment, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, great move by him and Matt. Great selection by you. Appreciate the check-in. Also love that. Never had a bad day in my life.
Yeah, that was something.
I wish. I've had bad days. I'm having a good one right now doing this show, filling in for Andrew. But
it makes one of us.
Oh, no, wow. All right. My goodness. But Jamie Moyer is a great pick. Local kid. Loved the Phillies growing up. Comes back, pitches here. Jamie Moyer, I have a soft spot for him as well because he never really threw all that hard, and I never really threw all that hard. So that was like a pitcher that I was like, oh, wow. Maybe I could actually, I could do this baseball thing if Jamie Moyer is still doing it. Also, Jamie Moyer, he feels like he played relatively recently. It's not.
No, not to me.
Wow.
I don't feel that
obviously,
way.
I'm a little bit older than you. But, for me, I vividly remember Jamie Moyer's time here in Philadelphia. The dude's already 61 years old because he played Major League Baseball till he was old as dirt. And at least in baseball terms, the guy was just completely consistent. Love Jamie Moyer. That's my guy. So that's a great pick. If you have someone who's either a local that came back and played for one of the teams, the Sixers, Phillies, Flyers, or Eagles, or someone who was initially drafted by one of the teams and then left and spent their time elsewhere and then came back, I think it's a fun little side topic to share your favorite Philly homecomings.
So there's a couple on the Eagles right now that are homecomings.
Yes, there are.
I would say my favorite, though, is Hassan Reddick.
You're a Temple girl.
Yeah, I am a Temple girl, and he went to Haddon Heights, and I am the next town over. So I always knew who he was, and I obviously could see what a great player he was. So that was an easy one for me. You also have DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, that's a great one.
That's another homecoming. That was really nice because everyone knew that he was an absolute stud. So I don't know. There's quite a few Eagles. Then you have Corey Clement, who was maybe
Glassboro.
from Glassboro. And he was a walk-on, right? Didn't he have to ask a security guard or something to try out? He had some weird connection.
He went to Wisconsin, and then he was undrafted, I believe, and then came here. So
yeah, he had some weird connection on how he got onto the team. I don't remember exactly what it was, but
there's a lot of Eagles recently. If we're gonna go high school, so Sean Bradley, my guy, who went to Rancocas Valley, where I graduated from for high school. Also Dylan McKinnon, who's sitting out there, another graduate of Rancocas Valley Regional. And then Sean Bradley ends up playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. Had an injury last year. Hopefully a bounce back this year and gets to a situation where he can help the team on special teams again. But There are plenty of area folks that end up, well, I wouldn't say plenty, it's 1 in a million, but end up playing for the Eagles or the Sixers or the Flyers or the Phillies. So I love that. I love that conversation and people who come back at the end of their career too, who maybe weren't from here originally, but were drafted here, became part of the city, and then left for a little bit and then came back.
Yeah, I always thought it was cool, the concept of some of these guys being fans of the Eagles or the Sixers or the Phillies or whatever, and then they come back and they're able to play for them and, create their own legacy. And I always thought that was such a cool connection and a story to be had.
Yeah, 100%. And, of course, we're having this conversation because Kyle Lowry, area kid, NBA vet, he's finally playing for the Sixers, and he will make his debut tonight for the Sixers against the New York Knicks as the Sixers bounce back from the All-Star break, and hopefully in a much healthier fashion. Now, Gina Mizell joined these airwaves yesterday, and she talked a little bit. Of course, she covers the Sixers for the Inquirer. She talked about the expectations for the team, right, and for the Embiid-less Sixers post-All-Star break, where they're at health-wise, because Tobias Harris has been struggling with stuff. Nico Batum has been out forever, it feels like. DeAnthony Melton's been out forever. They haven't really been able to put together even half of a starting lineup for what feels like a month now. So here's what Gina had to say about what's going on with the health component of the Sixers equation.
I think we'll have some good news on people other than Joel Embiid, the DeAnthony Meltons of the world, the Nico Batums of the world, those other starters who have missed time, Tobias Harris, obviously, too. I would expect all or most of them to be good to go after this week off, and then we'll really get to see what this team looks like with everybody except Joel Embiid, which there have been times this season when they've sort of figured out an identity without him, with Tyrese Maxey being kind of the anchor, but having a Tobias Harris, having Nico Batum, DeAnthony Melton, Kyle Lowry, we're expecting to be at practice today, which is another interesting topic. Then you can really see, okay, can this team put something together and sort of survive and tread water and maybe even excel without Embiid for the next few weeks?
Well, that would be ideal, right, if they could excel, but it's a great point by Gina Mizell about what's going on with the health of this team. We all know that they've been crushed by injuries. So I'm just looking at the latest injury report here on ESPN for the Sixers for tonight. Robert Covington is still progressing with a knee injury. Nick Nurse has said that that's going to be a long-term thing. He's not playing tonight. Obviously, we know Embiid, with his knee injury, not playing tonight. Nico Batum is listed as questionable with that hamstring that's been plaguing him. Unfortunately, DeAnthony Melton has already been ruled out for tonight's game against the Knicks, so he will not be returning to play. But with Buddy Hield, DeAnthony Melton probably no longer is part of your starting lineup when everybody's healthy. So you'll have Maxey, you'll have Tobias Harris, you'll have Buddy Hield. You're going to have probably Paul Reed starting at center. And then if Nico Batum can play, questionable again for tonight's game, that puts you in a situation where you have, 4 of your starting 5 available. And Embiid is the only one who is not currently playing and won't be for a while. But that is a team, right? Maxey, Hield, Batum, Harris, Paul Reed. You're not going to win any championships with that team. But are you going to win enough games to keep pace in the East and maybe even improve your standing, excel, as Miss Mizell was talking about there? You certainly have a chance to do that. It's going to depend on the players stepping up, though, and they didn't really have enough firepower the past couple of weeks before the All-Star break to get that done. I think the Sixers are in a really solid spot when it comes to treading water now that people are getting healthy. I think the acquisitions at the trade deadline and in the buyout market were really well done by Daryl Morey. So here's my question. I think this is a very interesting look as to whether the Sixers have the firepower or not. Because we know that when Embiid and Maxey are your top pairing, that team can compete with anybody. In a series, we'll see. But in any game in the regular season, if Embiid and Maxey are playing, that team has a chance. But they don't have Joel Embiid. And I'm going to take Tyrese Maxey off the board for the sake of this discussion because I know that he is the next best player on this team. He is an all-star this year, just got done playing in that game for the first time. I'm sure that was an awesome moment for him. But taking Tyrese Maxey off the board, I want to know this. Who is the most important Sixer between now and when Joel Embiid comes back. I'm saying most important Sixers player because I can already hear it. I can already hear someone saying, I'm going to call in and say Nick Nurse. And yes, Nick Nurse is going to be hugely important. The coaching of this team without Joel Embiid has become so much more critical to the success of this roster as they try and live through a period of a crazy amount of injuries. But I'm talking about players on the court. Who do you think is the most important player to the Sixers having success between now and when Joel Embiid returns? I'm taking Tyrese Maxey off the board because that would be a unanimous vote. You could jump in at 610-632-0975 with who you think is going to be the most important Sixer until Embiid's back from his knee injury. So, Silvana, I'll ask you, who would be the most important Sixer for you from where we're at right now to whatever day it is when Joel Embiid comes back? We're still not sure when that's going to be, but who needs to be the guy? Tyrese Maxey off the table because I know that's everybody's pick, but who's the one that needs to really step up if this team is going to not just tread water, but excel?
I think I might have to go with Tobias Harris.
It's not a bad pick, but tell me why.
I just think you need more from him. And, he hasn't really been that consistent in the amount of points that he's been averaging per game. I don't know. I feel like you're just not getting his full force with him all the time. I just feel like he's not consistent with the workload that he's producing. And, as a veteran and working on the last year of his contract, come on. I think he can afford to step up a bit.
Oh, listen, with that contract, he can afford a lot. But here's my thing. I try and learn lessons quickly. I don't want to jump the gun and say, I've seen this happen one time, so that's how it's always going to be. But when things start to become a trend, I try and learn those lessons quickly so I don't keep getting burned by the same thing. And if I had $1 for every time I heard someone say, well, Tobias Harris has got to step up. He's got to be more consistent. He's got to perform to that contract. I would have more money than Tobias Harris has based on that contract.
Oh, yeah.
So I just don't think it's realistic to expect that from him anymore.
That's fair.
I think he's a solid NBA player. I think he's useful on this team. I think they're better with him than they would be without him. So I want to be as respectful as possible to the way that he adds to the game. But he's constantly underplayed that contract. It's okay. I mean, if you can get that money, get it. But he's underplayed that contract. And he has not been as consistent as you would expect him to be for the amount of money he's making and the role he's been in. So for all the years he's been here, he hasn't proven he's capable of it to me or to the standard that I hold him to. So I'm done expecting him to. I'm done expecting that to change.
I think that's completely fair, and I feel like most fans are kind of at that point, too. I mean, it's kind of just accepted at this point. I mean, you're on Twitter. You see what it's like.
Yeah. He is what he is.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I wouldn't trade him for a crumble cookie, but I also am not going to say that I expect him to step up because Embiid is out and be the guy, because in the years he's been here, it's a big sample size, he just hasn't ever been able to be that, true step up to his potential
assassin shooter.
Yeah. My goodness. Don't get me started on all that. But I guess if I had to pick one, and maybe I'm expecting too much from this player because we've only seen him for a handful of games, but I think I got to go with Buddy Hield.
He's been producing very well so far for the 76ers.
He has. Part of me wonders if he's playing out over his skis a little bit because of the available players, or rather the lack of available players that they had prior to the All-Star break. There was no question that Buddy Hield was comfortable shooting because he's well, the dude next to me is on a two-way contract. Another dude out here is a third-string guy. We are the walking wounded, and I'm an NBA player. I'm going to shoot it because I trust my game. So I don't know what he's going to look like when everyone gets healthy and he has to start to fit into the scheme of a team that is not as centered around Buddy Hield as they were at points since he was acquired. But when I look at the Sixers' biggest issue, they do not shoot the three-point enough. No, they don't.
Not at all.
They are 25th in the NBA in three-point attempts per game. That's gone up slightly since Buddy Hield and Cameron Payne got here, but it needs to go up significantly more. And also, I think it's not just attempting to shoot threes. I think Buddy Hield shoots at a high enough percentage that he is a game changer with that part of his game. That's why the Sixers acquired him. And I think he's a little bit more versatile than some of the guys that have just been three-point shooters in the past for this team. So he fills a much-needed gap for the Sixers. And with no Joel Embiid, you're going to have a lot more of your scoring percentage come from the perimeter than you would normally because Embiid's going to work inside and work the post. Like, Paul Reed is a fine player. He's not Joel Embiid.
No.
You can win with Paul Reed on a regular season level, but you're not winning, again, all due respect, you're not winning because of Paul Reed on most nights.
No.
And that means that you're probably going to have to score more from the perimeter, which means that plays right into Tyrese Maxey, who's off the board, and Buddy Hield, who is your next best three-point shooter. Maybe your best three-point shooter, depending on who you value more. And that's why he's got to be the guy for me. So I think Buddy Hield's the most important player for the Sixers until Embiid comes back. Tyrese Maxey off the board, obviously. Savannah's going with Tobias Harris, which is the proper expectation. I just don't have faith in him.
Not entirely realistic.
Not in my opinion. But
yeah, one of the reasons I didn't say Buddy Hield is just because I was worried about his production and if it would continue and be consistent enough. Just because of how he played before he got to the Sixers, and then obviously he's been actually playing above his means prior to coming to the Sixers. But
yeah, I got you. Like, I think they're both kind of tricky, and this will show you, right? There are drawbacks to both of those guys. There is no perfect player for the Sixers anymore that's out there and available like Joel Embiid is. So your top options are going to be like a Tobias Harris or a Buddy Hield to be difference makers. And teams have been really good in the past with Buddy Hield and Tobias Harris as starting caliber players or difference makers. So that should show you, though, even without Embiid, you have a lot of talent here in the depth of this roster. And that's not even mentioning guys like Nico Batum, Tyrese Maxey we took off the board. Paul Reed can have his moments. Kelly Oubre is still a guy that averaged 20-plus last year in Charlotte. Like, this team has more than you think they do, I think. And tonight we get a good look at exactly what they're going to look like as they try and exist in the no Joel Embiid world for the time being. 610-632-0975 is the number to get in. How are you feeling about the Sixers and what they have in store for the post-All-Star break stretch? Let's go to Graf and Media next. Graf, you're live here on the Fanatic.
Hey, buddy. How you doing, man?
Doing good. It's been a minute. Everything good?
Yeah. A couple doctor's appointments today, so I'm just trying to enjoy it as much as possible. Been listening to you, and I think the conversation about the Sixers, Buddy Hield's my pick, and Savannah, I get Tobias Harris, but I've been hurt by Tobias for so long that I have zero expectation of him to do anything.
I don't blame you.
He's just I can't even talk about it. If I'm being honest with you and I want to enjoy the phone call, Tobias is going to make me go off on a tangent, and I'm just not ready for that. Dude, but the Sixers situation, as abysmal as it is right now, is also just as interesting, the ability to watch. It's almost an entirely new team, think about it with the numbers, with the number of starters that are on the team now compared to previous seasons. Here we are again. But I'm a little bit more confident in these players than I would be in previous seasons.
I think you should be too, Graf.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so interesting, Connor, is because of the fact that you have a right to be confident in these players getting you to the playoffs for Joel Embiid's return. It's nice to see the maturity of Tyrese Maxey. Now, let's see if that continues into the season without JoJo, but I think Buddy Hield, I think guys like Kyle Lowry, and I think Batum, and even Paul Reed make Tyrese Maxey a little bit more comfortable. So, I think other than Tyrese, though, I think Buddy's your pick.
Okay. Hey, man, we're on the same page. I'll ask you real quick, Graf, before I let you go. What's your confidence level in this team, though? Do you believe that Embiid is going to come back and they'll still have a shot, or are you just kind of enjoying the change of pace and you don't really have faith in them long term?
I'm going to be honest with you, dude. I don't, other than Joel Embiid's health, I'm not going to doubt anything about him. Before he got injured, we're talking about a guy that was scoring more points than minutes played. So, even if he comes in and he scores a little bit less than that, he's still a force to be reckoned with. So, I don't know. I'm actually fairly confident. It's just a matter of seeding at this rate. So,
right.
that's why it's important on what these guys do. And the conversation, if I could, real quick, about Big Dom and Nick Sirianni.
Yeah.
The only reason as to why Nick Sirianni is here is because Jeffrey Lurie does not want Howie Roseman picking another head coach. That's the way that I feel about it. Basically, it was like either the two of you go or the two of you stay. I think the conversation about, like, A.J. Brown being here or not being here is ridiculous. There's no way Kellen Moore is not licking his chops with Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, and Jalen Hurts as part of his package, right? So, like,
yeah,
I don't know. I think that the media makes me uninterested in any of those conversations simply because they are outlandish and outrageous. And social media is really poisoning the environment. So, I think it's just like they're just scrounging for worms at this rate. And if you bite on it, they're getting what they want.
I got you, Graf, man. I appreciate the call. Wish you best of luck with those doctor's appointments and everything. Listen, I'm right on with him on a lot of those points. Like, I am. I don't think A.J. Brown's going anywhere. I think Kellen Moore would not let him out of the building. I do have questions about Nick Sirianni's ability to coach this team already, and the comments from Derek Gunn's tweet saying that when Big Dom was suspended, it made it hard for Nick Sirianni to control his emotions. That's very troubling. And then when it comes to the Sixers, like, I have more faith in this team than I think the average Sixers fan does. I'm not saying, oh, I'm right, you guys are wrong. Why are you so down on this team? I get why you wouldn't want the Philadelphia, or not wouldn't want, but wouldn't believe in the Philadelphia 76ers with the Joel Embiid injury issues and what they're going up against and how they've dropped in the seeding. I just look at a team and I say, if Embiid can be healthy, this is the best shot they've had in his era, right? This is the best team that has been put around Joel Embiid. Now, the issue is Joel Embiid might not be there to be the center of it. So it's all going to depend on his health. But if he can get healthy, he can get stretched out before the postseason, I think the sky's the limit for the Philadelphia 76ers. The tough thing is you're just going to have to put faith in an organization that has not really earned it from you. So that's what makes it complicated. But I'm with Graf on a lot of what he had to say there. What are your thoughts on where the Sixers are at and who needs to step up? I said Buddy Hield is the player that needs to step up between now and when Joel Embiid comes back from his injury. Silvana said Tobias Harris. Graf, our last caller there, agreed with me on Buddy Hield, but there's a bunch of options. Taking Tyrese Maxey off the board, what are you thinking about there? We'll continue that conversation on the other side. 610-632-0975 is the number to jump in. Where are you at mentally with the Sixers right now? Positive? Negative? Wait and see? There's a lot of ways to look at this very interesting season. We'll get into it coming up even more. I'm Connor Thomas. This is 97.5 Middays, filling in for Andrew Salchunas. Silvana Kelleher on the board. We're back after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic. Filling in for Andrew Salchunas. Had a little water spill on the way into the studio, so just had to clean
Oh,
that up a
sure.
little bit. I did. It didn't get on anything, but we're good. I was moving too fast, and I have the cup of water and just a little bit sprayed out. But that's fine. We'll clean it all up. It'll be all right. Yes, we've been having a fun little conversation. We were just talking about what's going on with the Philadelphia 76ers as they get back into action tonight. Thank goodness, because, I love watching what the Flyers are doing. I really do. Nice win over Chicago last night. TK with a nice goal. This team is playing above what we thought they were going to be. But the realistic expectations for them are not what it is for the Sixers. The Flyers might sneak their way into the postseason. The Sixers are supposed to be, legitimate contenders. And when Embiid is healthy, they have arguably the greatest basketball player on planet Earth right now. So I've been dying to see what this team looks like with Kyle Lowry and getting back healthy and getting guys like Nico Batum back and D'Anthony Melton back. Now, Melton has already been listed as out for tonight's game. Batum is listed as questionable, so we'll see if they get back. But we're looking at a game tonight that should be a lot more competitive for the Philadelphia 76ers than some of their contests ahead of the All-Star break. Who do you think is the most important Sixer between now and when Joel Embiid comes back? Who is most valuable to this team if they perform well? And I'm taking Tyrese Maxey off the board because obviously Tyrese Maxey is the guy that has to step up the most in Joel Embiid's absence. He is an all-star. He is the best player on this team available right now. So he's got to lead things. But that's kind of understood. Outside of him, who's the person that has to make a difference? Because Tyrese Maxey is not going to go out and drop 50 every night. He's just not. Is he capable of dropping 50? 100%. We've seen him do it this year. But he's not to the point of his career yet. Maybe one day he will get there, but he's not the type of player where he's a completely take over the game night in and night out the way that Joel Embiid is. And that's why you need more than just Maxey to help this team stay afloat and to maybe even excel past where we thought they could be in the standings once Embiid went down. So who is that to you? You can let me know. It's 610-632-0975. Real quick, the 12 o'clock sponsor is brought to you by, the 12 o'clock hour, is sponsored by Service First Heating and Air Conditioning. Get 0% financing for 72 months and a $500 rebate when you purchase a complete heating and cooling system from Service First. Learn more at servicefirst.hvac.com. The Sixers are really interesting. I asked this to a caller we had right before the break, right? I asked him, where's your level of faith in the Sixers? What do you believe they're capable of? And he was on board with kind of where I feel. Hey, if they get Embiid back, who's to say they can't make a run at this thing? Joel Embiid is playing unbelievable basketball, or at least was this year. You imagine that once he comes back, he'll have a little bit of rust to knock off, but as long as he's healthy, there's nothing that says he can't get back to that level of play. Here's the major question. Will he have enough time to get back to that level of play and also get used to three new teammates that are going to be valuable pieces for this team in Buddy Hield and Cameron Payne and Kyle Lowry, who's making his debut tonight? Will he have a chance to interact with those guys on the court enough to learn where they're going to be and put himself in a position to continue dominating basketball? That's the thing. Will he be back soon enough to have enough time to get ready for the postseason? But if he does, it's a big if, but if he does, this isn't even with Embiid healthy, this team thinks there's no reason we should think they'll make it out of the second round. No. This is, when healthy, the best Sixers team of the Joel Embiid era. I firmly believe that. With all the pieces considered, I think that this is the best team. The only other one that is close is that Ben, Jimmy, Tobias, JJ team with Joel Embiid. That team had a real shot. That team made a real run at it. I know they didn't make it out of the second round, but we know how that ended. And
yeah, we do.
Unfortunately, I can't even talk about that still. But luckily, the coach that you have here now is very familiar with that situation and is hoping that he can reverse the fortunes this time around, and Nick Nurse. But honestly, this team is deeper. They have more veteran players. Remember, like Ben was still a young player, also a flawed player. Joel was a young player at that point. Jimmy Butler was good, but in the system with Ben Simmons handling the ball as much as he did, he wasn't the Jimmy Butler he is now in Miami. And Tobias Harris was inconsistent, just like he's still currently inconsistent. But they've gotten more veteran players. They've got a deeper bench. They've got a better coach. Remember, that was Brett Brown at the time. Like,
very true.
this is the best shot they've had as long as they can figure out health. And that's it. Like, we're on YouTube, by the way, 975 The Fanatic on YouTube. And Tsunami Webster, what a name there on the YouTube chat, says, Embiid is coming back, but when? Now, I don't even want to guarantee anybody Embiid is coming back because the Sixers have given us no guarantee of that fact. It seems like he will, but until I hear something that says, okay, well, this is the targeted date for return and he's going to play this year, I know the Sixers and I know the luck that this team has, or rather the luck they don't have, and I'm not guaranteeing that Joel Embiid is going to come back, but that question is like right in the line of what I'm thinking. It's more the time frame of when Embiid returns than if he'll return to me. And if that time frame fits, I think this team has a real good shot at this. So I'll ask you, what is the expectation for the Sixers in your mind? Are you still thinking that a championship is in play for this team?
No.
Really? You're already, like, Embiid could come back in, I don't know, 3 to 4 weeks. Maybe even less than that.
Yes.
And play well, and they get into the postseason. They don't have a shot at all?
Okay, well, I think they have a shot, obviously, if Embiid comes back and if he comes back to, even half of how he was playing in the regular season before he got injured. But, it's so hard to say now what to really expect from them. I don't know. It's a really strange time, and especially with the second half of the season underway, I'll definitely have more of a clue once a couple of these games get under the belt, especially with the new roster, the new additions. But I don't want to say I'm entirely hopeful that they can get to a championship with Embiid back. If he plays the way that he did in the regular season before he got hurt, then yes. But we just don't know yet when he'll return and how he will be able to contribute and play. It's very difficult. It's not out of the realm of possibility, that is for sure.
Right, but it's going to be, in your mind, very difficult for the Sixers to put all of the pieces together to do this. They got to get a healthy Embiid.
Yes.
They got to get the right seeding in the
Health
postseason.
in general for the team. But, I really do trust the coach that they have. I will say that.
Let me ask you this, then. So let's look at this way, because I think a lot of people are in the camp that you're in. They look at the Sixers franchise and they say, all you've done is disappoint me in the Joel Embiid era. And the big man is hurt again. And we don't have faith that he's going to be back and play at full strength, or even if he is, they're going to have some problem in the second round.
Yeah, there's some bad luck or something.
Right, like people think they're cursed. Let's look at it this way. So going into next season, not that this season is over yet, this is projecting out a little bit, but are the Sixers going to be in a significantly worse spot next season? Joel Embiid's still on the books. Tyrese Maxey's going to get his max contract, but a lot of folks come off the books at the end of the year, which gives the Sixers significant flexibility, more than they've had, to add players or to become a destination for players. So, basically my question is, if people are in the same camp as you, that it's unlikely that the Sixers are championship contenders this year because of all the stuff they're dealing with, is this their last shot, or do you see the window still being open next year?
I think the window is still open for next year. I don't think that you can completely say that it is closed off. I mean, especially when you have Joel Embiid on your team, I think it's really difficult to say in general that the window has closed when you have, one of the best scorers in the league.
Right, and that would stand to reason. He is getting older, though, and people are worried that
health.
maybe, he will be in a situation where he doesn't want to play in Philadelphia much longer. So that contributes. I think you're right. I don't think it's Joel Embiid that's the focal point of that. I think it's Tyrese Maxey that is the focal point.
And the leap that he has taken from last year to this season is absolutely incredible. And it was really talked about, in the first half of the season, but only mainly the first couple months of it. But it really, people have kind of forgotten how much of a jump he really has did throughout the last season.
Right, because the Sixers, this is why Maxey's so important. And Embiid's a huge part of this, too. I'm not saying, Maxey can win it on his own. Don't worry
he's
about
the young
Joel
kid.
But, this is the first time that the Sixers have had that young player in the Joel Embiid era truly reach their potential. They drafted Ben Simmons, never reached his potential, and then went backwards after he got close to it. Markelle Fultz just never came close.
No.
And you brought in other young players that had chances, but never stuck around long enough because you moved them for more veteran assets. Moving on from guys like Isaiah Joe and Charles Bassey, trading Mikal Bridges for Zaire Smith and another pick because you want to have assets to move for other veteran guys. The Sixers have been victims of their own contending nature. And Tyrese Maxey, through all of that, has found a way to become a budding superstar. That's what extends your window, is having a young player that becomes a superstar, bringing in veterans on expiring contracts who seem to fit well with Joel Embiid, just puts you in the same cycle for next year. Tyrese Maxey is the first player, I think, to break that cycle of, you're going to be here for the long haul. You're going to reach your potential. You're truly going to be valuable to this organization and not fall apart in some way or request out or anything like that. And that's what extends your window, because you now have a transition from Joel Embiid having to be just the guy to maybe one day it's a even relationship between Embiid and Maxey as Embiid declines and Maxey continues to climb towards superstardom. So, again, I don't think that this is the Sixers' last shot. And that's refreshing, because last year I thought it was the Sixers' last shot. And the year before that, I thought it was the Sixers' last shot. And they proved us wrong a couple times because Daryl Morey made some shrewd moves and got more for Ben Simmons than you thought he was going to, and got more from James Harden than you thought he was going to. But ultimately, this is one of the first times in a while that I felt that this isn't the end of the road for the Sixers if they don't do it this year. It would be annoying that we have another year of Joel Embiid's prime gone, but that's part of what should make you feel good about the Sixers as well, is I don't think they're dead if they don't win this year. I have confidence in them if Embiid's healthy, but I believe they also have some longevity for the first time in a minute when it comes to where the franchise is heading.
Yes, very true. It's not all doom and gloom over here. Got to spin out of the perspective a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. It's not always just we need to win this year. There needs to be an overview of where this team stands. 610-632-0975 is the number to jump into the show. Just want to reset a little bit for you what we've been talking about in today's program. And we started off with one of the more complicated breakdowns of a situation that I've ever had to do on these airwaves. But so there were comments that the Eagles locker room situation is going to lead to a high-profile player not wanting to be here, not listed what player that was, and a whole bunch of other vague stuff that sounded like it was an attempt to just drum up controversy about the Eagles because they're a lightning rod. Then Adam Schefter went on the John Kincaid show yesterday, and he talked a little bit about whether or not he thinks those claims are based in anything. You still have that audio up, Sil? Here's what Adam Schefter had to say about the claims about the Eagles locker room falling apart and there's going to be a high-profile player not staying in the city. This is what Schefter had to say.
By the way, I don't even know if the National Enquirer would write something like that. And by the way, I texted somebody in the organization yesterday. I'm like, what is this? And the text back, the quote was, none of that S word happened. None of that S happened. That's what qualifies, as a report. You can just go say whatever you want, and it gets clicks, and people hear about it. Was somebody with another player's woman, or who knows? I'm just telling you that somebody in the organization was pretty adamant yesterday. None of that happened.
Okay, so that's Schefter, ESPN's head NFL insider. Like, his word carries a lot more weight than your average person when it comes to the NFL. Yeah, sorry, his word carries a lot more weight than the average person who covers the NFL when it comes to the NFL. He is one of the primary authorities on this stuff. Not that Schefter's always right, but that if he says something, it is based in fact. So basically refuting that claim. So you're like, okay, cool. We're good. No issues with that. We know what happened with the Eagles season, but you're going to go ahead and survive this, and you made coaching changes, and now we'll just move on to next season. And then Derek Gunn yesterday comes out with the tweet and says, according to sources, Jalen, big contract, pulled in numerous directions on and off the field, put him under a lot of pressure he didn't handle well. Big Dom, when he was suspended, he controls Nick Sirianni's emotions on the sideline, and in his absence, Nick gets in numerous arguments with players/coaches during games. And that starts a whole new frenzy because Derek Gunn is not just someone who throws out these random claims about nothing. Like, Derek Gunn is connected to this Eagles organization, to numerous players, and you can trust his word when he talks or tweets about the Philadelphia Eagles. And that had a lot of people worked up saying, oh, okay, well, Jalen Hurts wasn't focused and Nick Sirianni doesn't control his emotions, and now we're worried about the locker room of this team again, or rather the makeup of this team. You can't trust the head coach. And from that stemmed a lot of questions about what's going on with the organization again. It was just basically a lighting up of the fire again. We had a bit of a ceasefire, and then, like, all of a sudden, Derek Gunn was
out of nowhere.
Yeah, just and it's not out of nowhere, like, because the initial comments made sparked this, really. It's not on D Gunn, but you had a situation there where, okay, if this is going to pop back up again, I'm going to ask somebody about it, and I'm going to report what I heard. But then the most interesting thing is this A.J. Brown maybe tweet, maybe not tweet. A.J. Brown's Twitter account, it's his actual Twitter account, but people are claiming that someone else has control of A.J. Brown's Twitter account and is tweeting stuff pretending to be him, I guess. I don't understand this situation at all. I don't know that anyone fully understands it. Darius Slay was, like, quote tweeting tweets from him
Someone
saying,
needs to straight up ask him, and, like, one of the players tweet out and be like, yo, by the way, like,
yeah, like, is this him or not?
it should be addressed.
It seems that it's not, but it is his main account, so I don't know. So my point in all of this is I'm not attributing this statement to A.J. Brown. I just can't, because of all of the questions about whether or not this is actually his Twitter, or, well, it is his Twitter, but him on his Twitter saying it. But he tweeted out that Philly media is so lame. It's literally something every day. Then the fans believe the BS. They really should start raising the prices of microphones and cameras because you people will say anything for views. I see why nobody likes us because we don't even like us. Hashtag reality TV. People are saying that's not actually A.J. Brown saying that. I don't know whether it is or not. This whole thing is making my head spin. But if you stayed with me to this point, which I hope I've done a good enough job of explaining it, this led me to the conversation we started the show with. It might not be A.J. Brown saying that. That might just be some random person who has his Twitter. And if that's the case, A.J., buddy, get your Twitter back or something, because that guy's causing problems. But not A.J. Brown, the person who has the Twitter. It opens an argument, though, that I think is important for what happened at the end of the Eagles season and important for the city going forward, which is this. The media relationship with the players and vice versa has not always been like symbiotic. It's not always been compatico here in Philadelphia. They go back and forth. Players will say, I can't believe this person said this. Media members will say, oh, I can't believe, they'll write stuff about the players and then go back and forth with them. I mean, we have an ongoing, and this is not whether they're right or wrong, but we have an ongoing feud between the head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers and a media member and not even answering questions. Like, I'm not saying anyone's right or wrong in that situation. I'm just saying it is clear that there are times where the personnel of a team and the media strongly disagree. And there are times where the fan base stokes the flames a little bit. So what I was getting into to start the show was whether or not it was A.J. Brown who said it. I know there are players in this city that have had trouble with the media before. And I've had trouble with the fan base before. That's not new. But I do think that it's a fun question to ask and an important one to ask. How do we handle ourselves, and do we need to change it? Not trying to really change the fan base, but do you think the media is too hard on the players and takes things too far sometimes? Or do you think that players need to understand the level of scrutiny that comes with playing in Philadelphia and need to have thicker skin when it comes to how the media is going to cover them? Understand that it's just doing the job, it's not personal, and it's a microscope that you're under in Philadelphia, unlike many other in North American sports. So that's what we got into. And I think that there are faults on both sides. I do think the easiest solution, right, because the media's job is to ask questions and write stories and drum up content to try and get people to read their stuff or listen to their stuff. That's it. I'm part of the game myself. Like, I understand what the hustle is for media members to try and get people to listen. And while I think it should be on the right of every media member to do things the right way and not make stuff up or exaggerate stuff or take things too far just for a click or a listen, some people are going to do that. In Philadelphia, I think more importantly, players need to realize there are going to be times where you're treated unfairly. That's not fair, but that's just something that happens in this city because of the rabid fan base and the nature of Philadelphia being a large market that you have to kind of accept is part of the gig if you come here and play here. Maybe that's not good for the success of these teams. Maybe that puts you in a situation where some people don't want to come and play here. But that's something that if we're not going to ask the fan base to change and you're not on the side of, oh, the media needs to be a little bit easier on players, then that's the ask you got to have. So someone's got to do something different. Really, everyone's got to do everything different, but we're trying to make little changes to making sure that we get along better in this city between the fans and the media and the players. Because whether that was A.J. Brown who said that or not, this is a continuing issue in Philly that is really intriguing. And I don't think we handle it well, all three parties involved, or at least as well as we could. So that's what we talked about based on the A.J. Brown stuff. And again, I mean this as clear as day. I'm not attributing it to the individual because I cannot be sure that he's making those tweets. This is a conversation based on the statement, and I think it applies beyond just whether or not it was A.J. Brown who said it. So I'm just talking in general because the last thing I want to do is be like, A.J. Brown's mad at the media, and then tomorrow you find out he hasn't tweeted from that account in 2 months, and then I look like someone who's trying to go and make A.J. Brown look worse than what he is. So it's just a conversation based on the thought process. And I'm very interested where the fan base stands. 610-632-0975 is the number to get in on that. So that's what we did to start the program. You heard our Sixers conversation that we were on earlier on in the segment about where they're at right now. Coming up, a team we haven't touched on yet today, and I want to talk a little hardball with the Philadelphia Phillies a couple days away from their first spring training game. There's this interesting report about JT Realmuto out of spring training and what he's been working on this offseason. And it leads to another question, a question of trust and a question of track record. Do you believe that the Philadelphia Phillies have a track record of fixing or improving players when they come here? We'll get into that coming up on the other side. I'm Connor Thomas, filling in for Andrew Salchunas here on 97.5 Midday. Silvana Keller on the board, and we're back after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
I'm Silvana Kelleher, and this update is sponsored by Christian. Another chilly shower. The
97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Connor Thomas back live with you here, filling in for Andrew Salchunas. He'll be back on Monday, coming back from vacation. But, yeah, we've been having a fun show. Silvana Keller on the board, by the way, having a conversation, an in-depth one, about the effect of media on players in this city and how players and teams need to interact with media to try and build a better relationship. And the onus isn't entirely on the players and the teams. That's unfair. There are times where I think the media does go too far. And then there's times where the fan base goes too far. And then also there's times where the players and the coaches and the organizations are too sensitive to what is just a tough market to play in. So everybody needs to look in the mirror, but I'm interested in what the fan base perspective is. Is the media too tough, or do the players just need to be a little bit more cognizant of the way they're going to be covered when they play in a city like Philadelphia? Is that just part of the job description? Now, we have a little bit of an update from spring training. And this is from Matt Gelb on Twitter. And apparently it's been a heck of a day down there. This is not really related to the on-the-field stuff, but an update from down there. There have been, like, major cell phone outages, like, everywhere.
I didn't see this yet.
Yeah, some of the major networks are just down all over the place. And Matt Gelb tweets, many cell phones aren't working. A bird, we'll edit this a little bit, went to the bathroom on Aaron Nola's shoulder this morning during photo day. Then the entire Phillies complex lost power.
Wow.
So it's been a fun day down there in Clearwater.
And their uniforms are see-through. Did you see that?
Love it.
Yeah.
The new uniforms are so terrible.
Awful.
Baseball. Like, they legitimately look. I have a Roy Halladay jersey that I got a decade ago that is just, like, worn out. Because I wore it everywhere. I love Roy Halladay. That looks better than the jerseys that the actual players on the field are wearing down in spring training. So, but, yeah, so that's fun. So Aaron Nola's getting hit with the bird bomb. Cell phones aren't working. Phillies complex lost power. Fun day down there in spring training. So a funny tweet from Matt Gelb. But speaking of the Philadelphia Phillies, as we move on, and if you'd like to chime in on that conversation on the media and the players and their relationship in the city, especially with how it pertains to the Philadelphia Eagles collapse this year and whether or not you think the media had anything to do with that, like, you can join in on the conversation, 610-632-0975. But I do want to talk a little bit about the Philadelphia Phillies because there's been this interesting little storyline that started to develop in spring training since the team showed up down there in full. So their first practice in full was on the 19th. It's only been 3 days since they've been down there. So it's not like we know who's going to make the team in the questionable positions and stuff, but you start to get little nuggets about who is working on what in the offseason. And there's been this line of commentary that the Phillies believe they have helped JT Realmuto fix a hole in his swing. JT Realmuto had an uncharacteristically down year last year. It was not a best catcher in baseball type of season. And luckily for the Phillies, they were able to withstand that on the merit of some other players on the team. But his career batting average is .273. Last year, he batted .252. Sure, he hit 20 home runs, but my goodness, he did not have a great year average-wise for the Philadelphia Phillies. He struck out 138 times. That would be the highest mark in his career. He walked 35 times. I mean, that was the lowest number of walks in a full season since go way back to 2016 for him. The only other year was 2020, and that was a shortened season. Like, he didn't have a great year at the plate. And people started talking about, oh, is JT Realmuto washed? Is he getting old? Is the fact that he plays catcher and he's on, like, he's basically in that crouch position, it's a lot of wear and tear, getting hit by foul balls and stuff like that. Has that worn on him to the point where he's old now and on the decline? I think that would be a natural assumption for people to make. Yeah. Like, you just don't last that long as a catcher. Why do you think Bryce Harper played right field? He initially came up as a catcher. And the thought was, well, you're a very valuable player. We kind of don't want you getting smoked by 99 to the mask like 3 times a game. So We'll stick you out in right field where you're going to be safe. Meanwhile, he does get
Yeah.
hurt every once in a while, but
Now we'll
that's
put you at first base where you're safe.
kind of. But bottom line is, you look at a catcher and you say, okay, it'd be natural if they had the earliest decline of any baseball player because the wear and tear on their body from the position. And yet, there's this line of thinking that the Philadelphia Phillies believe that they have fixed a hole in JT Realmuto's swing. They looked at what he did last year. They looked at what was different from what he had done in previous years when he had been successful. And then they paired those two, and they're like, here's what you have to fix. And he worked on it this offseason, and the Philadelphia Phillies feel better about it. Here's what I'll say. And I was talking with the Best Show Ever folks out there about it. Ricky was there, Ty, Jen. We were discussing what's going on as far as, do you believe the Philadelphia Phillies when they tell you this? And we're all kind of on the same page. And Ty and Ricky made a great point. Like, JT has been a consistently good baseball player for a lot of his career. I mean, just listen to these numbers by year. We'll start at 2017. Batted 278. 2018 batted 277. 2019 batted 275. 2020 266. 21 263. 276 in 2022 for the Philadelphia Phillies. Like, then last year, he takes that drop off to 252. It's the lowest batting average of the last 10 years for him, basically, or 8 years since 2015. Not a big math guy, but it's his lowest batting average since the end of the 2014 season. I believe the same thing that those guys believe, that it would make sense that JT Realmuto could fix his swing. He's a consistent baseball player, and he might have just had a year where he had a hole in his swing. So you believe in the player. But I think more important than that is to have a conversation about whether or not you believe in the organization. Do you believe in the Philadelphia Phillies and their approach to hitting and their way to fix players or improve players or develop players, that this would stand to reason? Because JT Realmuto is going to be a huge part of this team this year. I'm not breaking any news with that. There are a lot of guys that are going to matter, and JT's one of them. So let's look at the Philadelphia Phillies track record and look at some of the guys that have improved since they've come here. We talk about this with the Sixers all the time. You'll get, like, the Sixers will sign or will trade for a 40% three-point shooter, and he'll come here and he'll shoot like 32%. We'll be like, are the Sixers cursed? I don't know. That's a deeper conversation on a different team. But my point is, there are teams where it seems that the guys that you get, they don't improve or they even go backwards. The Phillies have a pretty solid track record. The first thing that comes to mind is Brandon Marsh. Brandon Marsh may not be able to hit lefties. We don't know. We'll see this year, once he's healthy from his knee procedure he's had, if he shows off that ability. But I know this. Brandon Marsh is a capable major league hitter to the point where you can play him in the outfield day in and day out. That was not who he was in Los Angeles. That guy was struggling to hit major league pitching, and he came here and he figured it out. That's credit to the Philadelphia Phillies. Let's look at Johan Rojas. Guy was not a plus offensive prospect. He hit .302 last year against major league pitching in the regular season. Now, postseason he struggled. Postseason's a different animal.
Yeah, a little different.
But the point is, like, that was a guy that was not supposed to have any bat whatsoever. He batted .302 in the regular season. I'm not saying Johan Rojas is Babe Ruth. I'm saying that he probably, in the regular season, outperformed what they were expecting from him, and they worked on stuff. We'll see what he does this year. Then you have guys like Kyle Schwarber, who his amount of home runs have gone up. His production has gone up since coming to Philadelphia. Part of that's the stadium, but part of that is his work here with Kevin Long and Rob Thompson and other members of the Phillies organization. I mean, Bryce Harper has turned into a better overall hitter, I would say, with the Philadelphia Phillies. He was good in Washington. Part of that is him continuing into his prime when he signed here. But, like, when was the last time you saw the Philadelphia Phillies get a player or have a player and they become a worse hitter coming here? Bryson Stott develops into basically a 300 caliber hitter in this farm system and as part of the major league organization. Alec Bohm, he was sent down, worked on some stuff, came back up, was one of the better clutch hitters on the team and in baseball last year. Nick Castellanos had a down year his first year. What'd they do? Worked on stuff, fixed it, all-star last year. Trey Turner, that would be a sign.
I was going to say, you know the one person that people are thinking.
Yeah, well, came here, rough. Now, part of that, I think, was the mental stress of being here, but we'll see what Trey Turner does this year.
And he made a comeback. Playoffs were at some points.
He was somewhat better.
Yeah.
Big mistake in defensively against the Braves. And,
expecting a big comeback year, to say the least.
yeah, you'd expect Trey Turner to bounce back. My point is this, right? The Philadelphia Phillies have a really good track record when it comes to fixing or developing or improving solid offensive players over the past couple years. Really, like since Bryce Harper got here, maybe a little bit after that. Let's go to like the Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos acquisition year. Like they've done a really good job of putting people in position to be successful. So when you tell me JT had a hole in his swing last year, I'm going to trust you that you fixed it because they have given me reason to have faith in them. We talked about Tobias Harris earlier and how every time you have faith in him, the guy seems to be as inconsistent as he was the last time around. Like the Philadelphia Phillies have given you reason to believe that when they tell you they fixed something or when they tell you they've worked with a player to fix a hole in their swing, you should buy that. So let's extend that even further, right? Last year in the postseason, you had a situation where the Philadelphia Phillies just fell apart in the final couple games against the Diamondbacks. Couldn't do anything offensively. I look at that as more bad luck. But a large part of that equation, too, was bad approach at the plate. It was a couple games, and it killed them. So even though it was a small sample size, it was hugely important that they get that fixed. But again, I'm telling you this, right? You have to trust a team's track record. You have to see what teams are good at and believe that they'll be good at them again until they prove you wrong. I know that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to develop good offensive linemen because Jeff Stoutland is here and Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie want to spend capital on the trenches. I know that they're always going to invest in those positions. I have faith that if you're going to go get a lineman, he's probably solid, or if not, you're going to fix that quickly, right? Like, I have faith that the Philadelphia 76ers okay, we'll come back to that one.
I was going to say, that one's a little bit harder.
We'll come back to that one.
Got to dig a little deeper to find that one.
But my point is there are certain organizations in this city with certain trends. And the Phillies have become a team that has trended positively in the developing and fixing offensive problems, fixing swings. They are swing doctors for the players in their organization. So that means the guys who had down years last year, Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber at points, JT Realmuto for sure. Like, you should have faith in this team to fix them. They've done really well at fine-tuning the things that make them great. So when I hear that, I believe that JT Realmuto is going to have a bounce-back year. I have no reason not to believe that. But it goes further. There are two guys that really need to continue to develop, and I've mentioned both of them already. If you believe that they have a track record, which we've established in this conversation they do, who could benefit most from that this year? It's not JT, but it's the two guys in center and left field. You have two young players trying to make this team and trying to become everyday player in the case of Brandon Marsh. Rojas is the one who's trying to make the team. But the Phillies organization is probably going to give them the best possible shot to do that simply because they've proven that they can develop young talent and turn them into great hitters. They've already started to do it with Marsh. They are going to try to do it with Rojas. My point is this. The Philadelphia Phillies are going to find a way to develop these players. They do that well. They've proven they've done it well. You should put your faith in them. You know what? This is a great example. I don't know that it's quite to this level. By the way, you can chime in at 610-632-0975 on this conversation. Do you have faith in the Phillies organization that they are swing doctors, that they have fixed enough players' issues or developed enough players offensively in this era of Phillies baseball, like the Dave Dombrowski post-development retool Like, he completely retooled the minor league development, coaching, and staff and everything like that. And since then, it seems that they have everything figured out. Like, do you believe in that as much as I do, or do you have a lack of faith in the Philadelphia Phillies' ability to put Trey Turner in a spot to have a better year, put JT Realmuto in a spot to have a better year, watch Brandon Marsh and Yohan Rojas develop? Like, I'm fully having faith in them. I don't know if the fan base is. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But this is the right example, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's this far because this is straight up, like, witchcraft. Like,
What?
the Miami Heat, every single year, will draft some unathletic dude out of some D3 college that you've never heard of, and that dude's going to come in and he's going to average like 15 and 7 in a playoff series when it matters most. But I don't know how they do it. I don't know what Pat Riley does down there. I don't know what Eric Spoelstra coaches down there. But I know for a fact, if I see a dude who played at like Ursinus College on the roster down there in Miami, that dude's going to be like the next great basketball player. Like, they just do it. And I don't know how it makes sense, but they do. So when you see that, you always believe that that is the quality of player that they're getting in Miami. They know how to draft and they know how to develop. Certain organizations have that. And I think the Philadelphia Phillies have become one of the organizations where you can believe in their ability to develop offensive talent. Not quite to the level of the witchcraft that Miami does down there with the Heat. But I think this is enough of a trend that you should feel good about the Philadelphia Phillies. So that's just my kind of look forward to bounce back years for these guys, because I think the Phillies have established that they're good at creating those opportunities for players and fixing problems. 610-632-0975 is the phone number to jump into the program. Are you buying what I'm selling when it comes to the Phillies and the trust in their staff and the organization as a whole? Or do you think that this is the beginning of a decline for players like JT Realmuto, for Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos, guys that kind of dropped off near the end of last year or weren't consistent over last year? Do you see them as potentially being problems in the lineup this year that you're going to have to adjust for? So we'll get into that as we continue the show. And also, we had this was perfect, right? We had a caller earlier, Graf from Media. Good guy, Graf. And he also brought up a point about the leadership of the Philadelphia Eagles. When we talk about the media and the players and the fan base and the relationship between those three groups, I said earlier on in the show that I think the responsibility for making sure the players are aware of what they're in for should be the head coach. I think that falls on Nick Sirianni's plate. And that brings us back to the Derek Gunn tweet that says Nick Sirianni couldn't control his emotions without Big Dom on the sideline. So some people, myself included, might not have the most faith in Nick Sirianni to keep this team together. And we know that this past year, the team did not stay together during the tough stretch of the season, and that's why part of the reason why bad coaching was a big part of the reason, but part of the reason why they fell short of expectations and got smoked by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So if you don't have faith in the coach, who does the leadership fall on? I'm not talking about the coordinators. I want to get into a conversation about the next generation of leaders for the Philadelphia Eagles. Because I'll be honest, and this is one of those situations where I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see a clear succession plan for the leadership that you could be losing this offseason. Maybe I'm missing somebody or a couple somebodies. So we'll see what your thoughts are coming up. But the leadership of the Eagles, not in as solid of a spot as it has been in the past. So we'll talk about what they need to do to fix that as we continue the program. I'm Connor Thomas, filling in for Andrew Salchunas here on 97.5 Middays. Silvana Kelleher on the board, and we're back after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
I'm Silvana Kelleher, and this update is brought to you by Wawa. Wawa's new Snack and Go wraps make anytime snack time. Try flavors like buffalo or honey hot chicken, only $2.49. Gotta have a Wawa. The Sixers return from the All-Star break tonight, almost healthy, and hosting the New York Knicks. Philadelphia native Kyle Lowry is expected to make his debut in a Sixers uniform tonight as well. Tip-off is at 7 and can be heard here live on 97.5 The Fanatic. The Flyers tacked on another win last night against the Chicago Blackhawks. Their 3 goal scorers were Travis Konechny, Travis Sanheim, and Garnet Hathaway. They will be back on the ice Saturday against the New York Rangers at 3 p.m., which of course can be heard here live. The Phillies, they're inching closer to opening day as their first spring training game is this Saturday against the Blue Jays at 1:07 p.m. 35 more days until opening day at Citizens Bank Park. I'm Savannah Kelleher. Breaking sports news day. Breaking sports news all day, every day is here. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
The Philadelphia 76ers play here. Every game home and away. We'll have the play-by-play tonight. Presented by Corona, official partner of the 76ers, the Phila Cerveza. This is the exclusive home for Sixers basketball. 97.5 The Fanatic.
Are you a business owner, decision maker, or C-suite executive? Then you know the key to success isn't just what you know, it's who you know. At BCA, we believe in inspiring genuine, selfless relationships. Picture a community of like-minded business leaders driven by a shared passion for success and collaboration. That's the magic of BCA.
Hi, I'm Sherry Onesti. My husband, Tony, and I own U.S. Construction Group. Through BCA, we've gained business education and inspiration. We've developed new professional relationships, and we've made some wonderful new friends who share a common ground of owning a business.
When you join the BCA community, you'll discover a world where meaningful connections are forged and trust and support are at the forefront. Whether it's diversifying your connections, gaining valuable insights, or unlocking new business ventures, BCA is your platform for growth. Learn more at bcaproud.com. BCA, where relationships are the key to success.
Look, it's cold outside, right? Frosty, freezy in the mornings. It must be February. So if you finally had enough of the frigid drafts coming through your windows and the frustration of getting those energy bills, it's time to fight the February cold. You're going to get quality replacement windows now from Window Nation. So for this month only, replace your windows and save big with 50% off all style windows. Plus, 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. It's the shortest month of the year, but
Connor Thomas back live with you, filling in for Andrew Salchunas here on 97.5 Middays. Silvana Kelleher on the board. What is the future of leadership for the Philadelphia Eagles? Who are the next generation of leaders? Some will still be here from the old guard, but there is a chance that we have a major changing of that guard this offseason. We don't know what the decision is, but we know that there is a very solid chance that Jason Kelce has played his last football game for the Philadelphia Eagles and football game in general. That's a guy that's a big-time leader for this team. There's also a chance that Fletcher Cox has played his final football game in general, and also, obviously, for the Philadelphia Eagles, who is one of the defense's top veteran leaders. Those are two guys that are hugely important to what the Eagles do, both on the field and off. And maybe, at least in Fletcher Cox's perspective, like I think Jason Kelce is still hugely valuable on the field when he plays, all pro level talent. All due respect to Fletcher Cox, who had a nice year this year, he's become more of a rotational piece. So he's still like a beneficial player to have for his football ability. But I think he's even more valuable for the leadership that he brings as a veteran player. If both of those guys retire, then the leadership of your team is down to Brandon Graham, who is heading into his final season. We'll see if the Eagles bring him back. They'd have to go ahead and work on contract setup. But even that, like, he's not playing for 20 more years. Brandon Graham has one more season max, and then he's going to ride off into the sunset. Well-deserved, all-time great Eagle, great leader. But that means you've only got one more year with him here. Is Lane Johnson long for the world of NFL football? I mean, he's younger than those guys, but he's in a situation where he's had significant injuries. He doesn't have much more to prove when it comes to his ability to play the right tackle position. Could he have 1 year left? Like, they're winding down their careers. Whether or not this is the last year for Cox and Kelce, and whether or not next year is the last year for Graham and Johnson, those guys are on their way out. And I don't mean that like, oh, they can't play anymore. I mean, they're choosing not to play anymore sometime soon. And they have that right because they have given everything to this organization, each and every one. But who's left to take their place? Naturally, you would look to a couple of places. First of all, the head coach. But we have established throughout the show today that Nick Sirianni does not have a lot of faith in him on the part of the fan base. Potentially, he might not have that much faith in him on part of the players. We've heard from some players defending him. But we also know that A.J. Brown led a players-only meeting at a point this past year when the season was falling apart to say, hey, we need to trust the coaches more. We need to have more faith in the coaches. That's not a meeting you have if you have faith in the coaches. So there might be some in the locker room that we haven't heard from that are like, I don't know if I have full faith in this guy. And on top of that, we've read you a couple times the Derek Gunn tweet about Nick Sirianni's emotions not being as controlled when Big Dom was not on the sidelines. After he was suspended, there are more arguments between Sirianni and players and coaches, and that leads to some people questioning what's going on as far as his ability to be a locker room leader and just a leader in general of this team. So when I look at this, I just try and picture the Eagles roster in a year or two. Who's going to be here? Who's not going to be here? And who are the leaders of this team? Because make no mistake, you should have learned from this past season that leadership is key to keeping teams together when you experience adversity. No season is going to be perfect. No team since the Dolphins in the 70s has had a perfect season. So when you go through those tough stretches, you're going to need to have guys that say, instead of collapsing like the Eagles did this past year, yo, we got to fight through this. We got to stick together. We got to keep the locker room together, all that great stuff. So let's look at the Eagles roster, right? Just going to pull that up here. And I'm going to run through some guys that could potentially be leaders for this team in the future. And I want you to tell me who you think could take the positions of guys like Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson and Brandon Graham, not their literal positions on the field, but like become leaders on this team. Because I worry that right now there is not a clear succession plan for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts is a guy that I think is already proven he is a strong leader. I don't know what happened this year with the team, but I know that that is a guy that, as the franchise quarterback of this team, people seem to want to play for, want to be around, want to follow. So I think Jalen Hurts will be fine. Outside of Jalen Hurts on the offensive side of the ball, kind of looking for answers here. The running back position's bare right now. Landon Dickerson's too young. Cam Jurgens too young. Like, I guess Jordan Mailata would be the pick.
That's probably the only other one I would guess.
Which is fine. You could get by with that. I think you would need, like, my random benchmark. This is not based on any type of fact. This is just a feel, like a gut feeling type of thing for me. My benchmark would be 3 on either side of the ball that you can trust and say, those are my guys when things go poorly. So you got Hurts offensively. I'm comfortable with saying Mailata offensively. Yeah. Then you need one more. I'll tell you what, as much as I'd like for it to be A.J. Brown, I don't know that he has that in him. And that's okay. Like, you don't have to be a leader to be a great football player. You don't have to be a leader to be a great teammate. Some people are just good teammates, and they don't want the responsibility of being a leader, or they don't garner the responsibility of being a leader. I would say that Devontae Smith would be the other pick.
That's fair. I think AJ could definitely be a possibility. One thing I guess I would point in favor of that is maybe with the leading of, no coaches meeting,
right.
And also, the escape room that I try to do for team building.
Yeah.
I think it's possible. I don't think he seems like my gut instinct, like he would be my next pick. But I think it's definitely possible. But I could see Devontae Smith maybe having more of a leadership role than AJ.
Yeah, well, here's my thing, right? When I look at the archetype of Eagles leaders right now, the Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Mount Rushmore of, like, guys who led this team in this era. I look at that and I say, which one of these guys fits more that mold of player? And to me, I think it's more Devontae Smith. And that's not like, well, A.J. Brown has no shot to be a leader for this team. I have questions based on the conversations between him and Jalen Hurts on the sidelines, the tweets versus whether they're his or not, like the not speaking to the media for days and days. Like, it just doesn't feel. If he was the quarterback of this team, like, would you feel good about where you're at? Like, that's kind of
That's a
thing.
fair perspective to put it in.
Right. And I'm not saying playing the position, obviously, but if that was the quarterback with all the microscope and flashlight or spotlight, I should say, on him, I would feel better about Devontae Smith's demeanor than A.J. Brown's. And that's a high bar because I think Devontae Smith is one of the best teammates on this team. Like, he's just straight up about his business, never throws anybody under the bus, none of that. But A.J. Brown could be the guy. We're splitting there. So I think the offense is set. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball.
Real thin.
Very thin. Slay's not going to be here forever. Bradbury, a lot of people think he won't be here this year. Like, he could be a post-June 1st cut.
But
Well, they would significantly reduce the cap hit. Yeah, so we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But either way, those are not guys that I look at as that. Slay is, but I don't think Slay is going to have a significantly longer time here at Philadelphia than what he's already had. The linebacking core, nobody.
Yeah, no one.
Legitimately nobody. Could Nakobe Dean be a guy one day? Sure, as a leader, but he can't stay healthy on the field. You have to be able to play to get the respect you deserve as a leader, and he hasn't done that. Safety-wise, Sidney Brown, know nothing about the kid.
Yeah, too early.
And Reed Blankenship, again.
Can't stay healthy.
That, but also, like, he doesn't have the play that really carries him to that level, at least for me.
I agree.
So, like, think about what we said about the offensive side of the ball. Jordan Mailata, great lineman. Jalen Hurts, great quarterback. Devontae Smith, great wide receiver. A.J. Brown, great wide receiver. Like, you also have to have greatness in your play.
Yeah.
And I don't think Reed Blankenship has that to that level yet.
No.
So then that leaves us the defensive line because we've already gone through the corners. We've already gone through the safeties. We already said no to the linebackers. Jordan Davis hasn't been productive enough. He hasn't.
No. Yeah, and he's out of shape. He's overweight. You know,
I
it's
don't
not even
think
really
he's-
abiding by.
I think that's overplayed, the out of shape, overweight type of thing. I think Jalen Carter. So Jalen Carter hit a wall this year as a rookie,
Yes.
and no one questioned whether he was in shape or not.
No, that's true.
I just think Jordan Davis is still adjusting to NFL life, and I think he'll get there. We had this same issue with Embiid. Now, Embiid early on in his career was out of shape compared to where he's at right now. But when you say that about a person, it almost sounds finite. Like, this guy is out of shape, he's lazy, this, that, and the other thing. You'll never work out. I'd say the 70-point scorer for the Sixers does not qualify as lazy. So I hesitate to call him that. I will say that he needs to get into a position where he can play more consistently over the course of a full season.
Yes, more snap counts.
But Jalen Carter, too young. Don't know what his leadership ability is. Nolan Smith's non-existent. Like,
Yeah.
there are only a handful of guys on the defensive line that would even remotely qualify.
Josh Sweat.
I don't know that Josh Sweat has enough of a voice in the locker room. I don't
Yeah.
hear much from him. I don't hear many people talk about him that way. Hassan Reddick could be that guy.
But we don't know.
And he could also be gone.
Yeah, he could be gone.
Like, before this next season starts.
That's the biggest one that my mind goes to, is that it would be Hassan Reddick on the defensive side, but you can't even say that for sure because you don't even know if he will be here. So it's very thin on the defense.
It is. And I'm not saying that, like, if you put together the best possible football team in history of guys that, like, don't fit the quality of true leadership in the NFL, I'm not saying that team couldn't win. Like, talent is hugely important too. And I think the Eagles are going to get to a place where they have talent. I just look at the leadership changing, and I don't see in every instance a lot of guys ready to step into that role. The offense kind of has it. And maybe some more will develop on defense. But that has me a bit worried because of what happened down the stretch. And if I don't trust the head coach, there needs to be someone who holds this team together, or a couple of someones. And they need to be on both sides of the ball. And I don't know that the Eagles have that right now. Maybe you think I'm overstating how much leadership means compared to talent. You can let me know. It's 610-632-0975. Let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Mike and Delran next. Mike, you're live here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
What's up, guys?
How you doing, Mike?
I was doing great until I listened to the most depressing segment of Sports Talk Radio.
Oh, come on. I've had more depressing segments than that.
Depressing? You mean to tell me the only thing keeping this team from unraveling is Big Dom? Come on.
Might be.
That sucks. That sucks, man.
I
I
know.
wasn't even in this mind state until I turned the damn radio on. That's terrible. But we don't have there's no leaders after these guys retire or they're gone. Wide receivers aren't leaders. Look at a team in the NFL and tell me where there's a leader and wide receiver in the team, right? Those are me first guys. I don't, regardless. That's usually how that works.
That is the nature of that position sometimes, yes.
Running backs aren't leaders, right? The only leaders are usually like offensive line and the quarterback. And our offensive line leaders are going to be gone, and our quarterback doesn't want to do it. On the defense, I mean, what is it going to? I mean, are our leaders going to be Jake Elliott and Reed Blankenship?
I would follow Jake Elliott. That guy can kick.
Yeah, cool. But I don't know. Something tells me he's not going to have much of a voice in the locker room.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's depressing. We might be worse shape than I thought we were after everything I just listened to. And I just wanted to call and let you know that you ruined my Thursday. You guys have a good one. Go Birds.
Go Birds. Happy to help, Mike. Thank
Not
you for the
ruining
call.
the Thirsty Thursday.
I mean,
Come
there's
on.
plenty of Thursday left to enjoy. And if I ruined it, the best show ever's coming your way at 2 p.m. They got a really fun thing they're going to talk about with Kyle Lowry and his debut tonight. So they're going to up the mood a little bit if I depressed you. I apologize to Mike out there. I think this is a very valuable question. Now, if I am putting you in a mindset where you're more worried about the Eagles than you thought you would be, here's the upside. I was just talking about it. Leadership, I think, sometimes is overrated the same way likability is overrated. It's more important than that, but it's in the same vein, right? Likability is so important in Philadelphia. Oh, he's a Philly guy. He plays with a Philly mindset. We liked Pat Bev because of it. We like Marcus Morris because of it. We like a bunch of people because they have that Philly mentality. Ultimately, the more talented team is going to win. Now, leadership is more important than likability, but I wonder how important it is overall. Like, do you need 3 leaders on each side of the ball to feel comfortable about your team? Or do you just need a team that wins consistently, that keeps you out of trouble of having to worry about adversity? No one's perfect, but if you win enough, you're not really going to hit that stretch of like, oh, the team's falling apart. So I may be overstating how much the leadership change is going to affect the Eagles. I just look at what they have now, what they could be losing in the next year or two, and I say, I don't know who's going to step up into those roles. I would really like to have a better idea of who's going to take the reins of this team from a player perspective from the guys who are retiring or could be retiring soon. 610-632-0975 is the phone number to jump into the show. Let's go to Robert in Abington next. Robert, you're live here on the Fanatic.
Hey, good afternoon. Real quick, I've been listening for 2 days, 3 days now, and what I've kind of taken out of the conversation is it seems to me like Dom has a pretty important role, not only as the head of security, but to babysit Sirianni on game day. My question is, as an organization, why didn't we have a fallback plan if Big Dom went out?
Well,
so your answer, you're a 6-game slide. Your answer is we just don't do anything. Can't be the right answer. Now, clearly Sirianni is. I mean, I'm starting to agree with you in that this guy should have been fired, and I think there's reasons he stayed around versus left, and I don't think it's necessarily because he just decided to take whatever was given to him by the owner. But my big question is, why the hell didn't we replace Dom?
Yeah, Robert, it's a fair ask, right? Because you would imagine that someone that important had like an understudy or something. But I guess what I'd just tell you is Dom DeSandro doesn't exist for like a lot of NFL teams. They all have heads of security.
But there's a head of security in every team.
There is, but they don't have the relationship with the team always that Dom does. They don't have the relationship with the fan base. They haven't been around as long as Dom has. Like, Dom's been here forever.
Fair enough.
So I don't think that that's as replaceable of a position as it seems. And I think they had other people like handling security while he was not there. But it's how often do you see the head of security for another team like holding back an NFL coach from talking to a player? Like, no one else has that relationship.
Absolutely, that's my point, right? It really could be anybody. I mean, the sideline is chock full of 350-pound dudes that can grab a hold of somebody. You don't need Dom to do it. I mean, if we're going to if as a fan base, we're going to accept the 6-game slide because the head of security wasn't around, then I'm going to need to ask the team, why the hell didn't you fix that then? If that was your problem.
I got you, Robert.
That was it. Go Birds.
Thanks, man. Go Birds. Appreciate the call. I understand what Robert's getting at. It's just such a hard thing to replace a relationship. It's not just a position. It's not
And the
just,
respect that he had as well.
Yeah, the guy is not making license plates. Like, you have to, it's not just punch the press and move on. It doesn't matter who's doing it. For example, like, if we've had new people hired here at the Fanatic, they cannot talk to, like, I don't know. If I was to go back there and talk to Ty and Ricky and Jen, I'm going to interact with them in a different way than someone who was hired here yesterday because we have a relationship. They know me. I know them. We know how we get along. Like, if someone else came in here and was like, you got to earn your stripes as far as the relationship is concerned to do certain things, like hold Nick Sirianni back from talking to players and control his emotions. You've got to earn that trust. You've got to build that relationship. We do it everywhere. It's not just the head of security of an NFL team. So you might say, yeah, why didn't they replace Dom? Well, they did, but that person does not have the relationship with Nick Sirianni that Big Dom does. So apparently, believe it or not, that sounds like it was a huge part of the equation, or at least a part of the equation, for what went wrong with the Eagles is not having that calming influence. But that's not what it should take, right? It's not why didn't they replace him. It's why did his absence seem to matter all that much? All due respect to Big Dom, if someone's jumping on the field and running around, if someone's throwing stuff at the team when he's away, okay, that's a difference because Dom's not there. But his job description should not be make sure the head coach handles his emotions. Like, that's ridiculous to me. Maybe that's overstated in the tweet from Derek Gunn. I don't know. But that's what he's saying per sources, and that's what I'm going to rely on for information until I'm told otherwise. So, sorry if I am in a situation here where I'm doing a segment where I'm depressing you about the Eagles. We had Mike from Delran call in just before our last caller there and said that this was a very depressing segment and put him in a bad mood about the Eagles. I don't know, man. I think they're going to be all right talent-wise. I do. And I think Howie Roseman's going to do what he needs to do. He has assets to make moves this offseason. They do have some cap space left to make things work. Jalen Hurts' full contract hasn't really kicked in to the nature it's going to in a couple years. So there's room to make adjustments. There's 8 draft picks to be used for either trade or drafting. There are new coaches in the building. I think the Eagles are going to be just fine. But part of this is how do you avoid what happened this past year? Because I thought going into this past year, the Eagles were going to be just fine. So I'm trying to find that breaking point where they became the collapsed team that they were and what caused it. I think leadership was a big part of that. And I don't really see a lot of leadership waiting in the wings, no pun intended, for the Philadelphia Eagles when the current stock of veteran players end up hanging it up. And sometimes these players develop leadership because they're forced into those roles. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just asking the question of, like, who do you see as a potential future leader for the Philadelphia Eagles? Because for me, on the defensive side of the ball at least, they seem hard to come by. Not saying they don't exist. I just need some players to show that they have that ability to keep the team together because last year I think they were somewhat lacking in that in times when it mattered, and you just saw from the way this season ended how much of an effect that can have on the way that an NFL season goes down. 610-632-0975 is the number to jump into the program. Man, this has been a really fun conversation about where teams are heading, and not just where teams are heading, right? We talked about just now the Eagles' potential future leadership. We talked about the Phillies' ability to fix players with issues offensively and what their track record says about the chances for bounce-back years this year. We talked about what the Sixers have in store. I mean, the Sixers play basketball tonight, and they're going to be relatively healthy, and they've made some moves. And Buddy Hield and Cameron Payne and Kyle Lowry are here. What does the future for that team this season have in store as they await for Joel Embiid's return and try and tread water until he does? And then we also talked about what the future of media and this fan base and the way players interact with those two groups should look like in Philadelphia. Judging from a tweet that may or may not have been from A.J. Brown, was from his Twitter account, but some people are claiming was made by an unknown third party to us. Bottom line is, the basis of that conversation that started the show was a very interesting one. Does the media go too far in the city of Philadelphia and adversely affect the players? Or do players need to spend less time reacting to the media, understanding that that is just the nature of playing in a city like Philadelphia where there's so much scrutiny on you always? I don't think there's a right answer. I think there's a gray area in between that requires give and take from both sides that is the proper place. But it was very interesting to hear from some of the fans out there, some of the listeners who said, okay, well, I think the media is too tough. Okay, I think players need to be tougher. Like we heard both sides today. So it's a battle that will rage on forever. And I think it's only getting more and more advanced because of what's going on with social media and the way that we have unprecedented access to people's thoughts. I'll tell you what. How many times a day do you walk down the street and you say, my goodness, thank God I'm not in that person's head? I think about it with my friends all the time. I have friends who do stuff that I'm like, I can't even comprehend why you did that. I don't know what you're thinking, but Dude, that was insane. Like, that's the thing. We have unprecedented access to what everybody's thinking. And that makes jobs like working in media or being a professional athlete or being a fan of a team, not that that's a job, but we treat it like one here in Philadelphia, that makes it different than what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. There are different ways to access players and send them messages, which we probably shouldn't do as much as we do. There's different ways to gain information and write about them if you're in the media. And there's a billion more media members because there's no barrier to entry. Everybody's got a podcast. Everybody's got a blog. So I just think we're at a very interesting turning point in that. And I think the Eagles are a great experiment for how that can adversely affect the team and how teams need to be prepared to handle that internally so that it doesn't become an effect on the way they play the game and it doesn't turn into a complete collapse of a season. Again, I'll say this one more time. The coaching was the main issue with the team this past year. Right under the coaching was the personnel not being good enough at executing and the GM not putting good enough players on the field when it comes to specifically the defensive side of the ball for the Eagles. But if you believe that the locker room was in great shape when the season ended, I don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah, don't fool yourself. No one likes losing.
No. And the Eagles did not handle losing well this year. Some years in the past, they've gotten through it, and they fought out and been better on the other side. This year, they didn't. So I have to imagine that the way that they're handling stuff like this might be in effect. And that's why I think it was a fun conversation from the maybe A.J. Brown tweet, maybe not A.J. Brown tweet, and some other stuff from Derek Gunn and other commentary on the team.
I try to put my detective hat on to literally look at the similarities between that tweet and the past tweets.
You doing some forensic checks back there?
Yeah, I was trying. There's some little discrepancies with how he uses punctuation. So.
Oh, okay. Well, you put that research together for us, and I'm expecting a full thesis paper on that tomorrow because tomorrow we will be back filling in for Andrew Salchunas on 97.5 Middays and Ray Dunn as well. Let's put him on there. He's part of the show. Myself and Silvana will be back tomorrow as they enjoy their time off, and we'll have this slot again. So it was a lot of fun talking to you during this program. Thank you to everyone who tweeted, texted, called, all that great stuff. Thank you to the YouTube chat for being along for the ride. Some good stuff from there. Always fun to interact with you guys, and hopefully I didn't make you too depressed with that look forward to what the Eagles have in store. I'm just trying to be realistic about the things the teams in our city are facing. We're kind of in that point where there's a chance to look forward because we don't have as much going on actively right now, which will change when the Sixers take the court tonight and get back into action. But there are things that we need to be worried about in this city, and then there are other things that I think we should be confident about. And I just like to lay those out for you to give us perspective about where we're at as a sports city. So again, thank you so much for being along for the ride. The best show ever is coming your way next. Ricky, Ty, Jen, and they've got some really interesting homecoming talk as far as Kyle Lowry is concerned. So I'm excited to listen to that. You should too. That's my time. We'll talk to you tomorrow right here on The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
I'm Silvana Kelleher, and this Fanatic Update is brought to you by Christian. Plumbing problems got you drained? Let the Christian team of plumbers get you flowing again this month. Only get a free camera inspection with any drain cleaning. Call Christian today at 833.